Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. Today is Friday, the 2nd of August, and we've spared no expense. We've got Stephen, we've got Little James, and we've got James P in the house. How are we all doing, gents?
I'm doing fine.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem. I'm on a bit of the rock shore. I had to rush back. I was dropping home the kids and I flew into Tesco, got myself a wee rock shore. I'm quite intrigued about tonight's podcast. I feel like we could go different avenues, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of frustrations vented, even though there's a couple of positives to talk about, which we'll obviously come on to, Gav. But I'm excited, looking forward to it, looking forward to the new season and a good chat with you fellas.
Excellent. Well, to everybody in the comments, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all enjoying your Friday evening, and hopefully the entertainment will continue on throughout the night. We are 2 days away from Celtic kicking off the season. Unfortunately, we are kicking off on the Sunday, whereas the other teams are playing on the Saturday. Bit of a strange one, but we'll get to that. We'll get to the Kilmarnock game and the transfer window, Adam Ida, the shenanigans continuing on, Bernardo signing. We'll get to all of that. But I would like to address one of the elephant in the room, and we do have a new guest today, James P. I don't actually know if you've been on the podcast before. Me and Little James, we've actually been on for, 6 months. Stephen has reminded me before. So I'm sure you've been on before we ever darkened the door of the Endless Celts podcast. But to anybody in the comments who are not familiar with yourself and the contribution you make to the online Celtic community, I was wondering if you could kindly introduce yourself, let us know who you are and the work that you do online in terms of the Celtic online community, please.
No problem, my friend. For those of you who don't know me, my name is James Forrest and I run the Celtic blog site. That's the one that annoys a lot of people these days, every day usually. The site is, I tell people who ask why we focus so much attention on the site, on the media, the Ibrox Club, the SFA, and occasionally other clubs, that it's not a Celtic site per se. It just happens to be called the Celtic blog, but I've always regarded it as a Scottish football site written from a Celtic perspective, and that's why we try and tackle as many of those issues as we can. But at its heart, it's written by passionate Celtic fans who love the club and care about the club. And in general, most of us have the same philosophy when it comes to loving the club, that we love it aggressively. We're the version of tough love, so to speak. That when the club needs a kick in the backside, we'll give it one. When the club deserves to be criticised, we will criticise it. But we also see it as an essential role to defend the club criticism when it's unwarranted, and we that's why we frequently argue with members of the press and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been doing the blog for?
I've been doing the Celtic blog, I think, for maybe 8 years now. I've been blogging for over 10, but the Celtic blog is about 8 years ago. I used to run a site called On Fields of Green, which was basically the same.
And it must be difficult putting in all that time and effort where you might not get... But how rewarding is it for you? Do you get to interact with Celtic fans who would give feedback on the blogs that you give? Do you get feedback from the club itself? Anything at all like that? I'm sure you might get your equal share of criticism as well.
The club's relationship with me is actually excellent. I'm one of the guys that goes to fan media conferences and stuff, and so I've met the managers and whatnot. And a particular highlight was, I think the first media conference I ever went to was the Ange Postecoglou unveiling. And I'd written some really harsh things about Ange, like when he was appointed, like really harsh. And by the time that day came about, I had obviously done some homework on him. Some people had recommended videos to watch. I read his book, and by the time I went there, I was completely solidly on board. And it was such a great pleasure to be able to question him and the then newly minted chief executive Don Mackay. And I don't think I've ever felt as optimistic as a Celtic fan as I did that day, listening to those two articulating their vision for the club.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Aye. Well, over the past 24 hours, from what I understand it, you put out a blog and it caught a lot of attention. a lot of positive reviews from fellow Celtic fans, but there was some people from a certain quarter who didn't appreciate it. So without me explaining it further, I want to kind of hand the microphone over to you. It'd be best to hear it from the horse's mouth. So would you be able to describe the blog itself, the content of it, and the aftermath, please?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a discussion online for about a week now, and I think I traced the origins of it to an article that appeared in the Daily Mail, which was a kind of interpretation of Peter Lawwell's tenure as first the chief executive and now as the chairman, which sought to like dispel some of the myths about Peter Lawwell. And I know it sparked a bit of a debate. There were some people online who don't believe that Peter Lawwell is the bogeyman. And neither do I, by the way, and I'll come to that. But it sparked a debate about some people who were saying, "Oh, Peter Lawwell's not the bogeyman. You can't blame him for everything that goes wrong at the club." There were other people online who said that in focusing so much attention on Lawwell, we're actually missing out on who the real targets are and who the real targets should be for criticism, which would be Michael Nicholson and other people currently at the club who have a more hands-on executive role. And I'm not unsympathetic to that argument. But what I wanted to do with the piece was present it as a kind of, well, here is what we know. Here is where we are. And does what we know right now look familiar to you? And can you draw any conclusions from that? So, I mean, I started it with an analogy about jokingly filling in a job application for MI5, where they make you do an online aptitude test. And basically that aptitude test, as I said in the start of the piece, is basically what I try and do every single day. Now, there's a lot of people who assume that the bloggers have like inside information, inside knowledge, and I don't have anything like that. There are times when I hear things, when the club gives me information. There's times when other people give me information. But in terms of like sources and whatnot, I'm not a journalist. I don't have those kind of relationships, and I don't write that kind of stuff. I write opinion pieces, and I always try and make it clear that I'm writing my opinion, that I'm stating my opinion and not facts. But what I try and do is I try and base my opinion on as much evidence as I can, and based on all the various threads of information that are out there, I try and extrapolate some meanings from it, which is basically what that online test was setting out for you to do. So that's basically what I did last night. I put together a timeline starting in 2021 when we were going into the January transfer window and we had effectively just lost the league to the club from Ibrox. And Peter Lawwell announced that he was leaving the chief executive position. Now we know what happened after that. The club did lose the league. Lennon was sacked. We went for Eddie Howe. We spent a couple of months in pursuit of a manager who then rejected us with very little time left to get things done. We hired Ange, and the rest is history. I started my timeline then and went all the way through it to where we are at the present day. And my contention at the end of the article was that the idea that Peter Lawwell does not play any role in an executive capacity and a decision-making capacity at Celtic is absurd. And I genuinely believe that it is absurd. That said, I recognise that there are people at Celtic who also should be subjected to criticism and who also should be subjected to scrutiny. And the article is pretty clear. And Brendan Rodgers himself, whether intentionally or not, gave us two names to focus on when he was in the States and said that he had sat down and had a transfer strategy meeting with Chris Mackay and with Michael Nicholson. So it's all in the article. So this morning, that got published at 8 o'clock this morning. By 9:30, it was doing quite nicely online. And I got a phone call from someone at Celtic asking that the article be removed. Now, it wasn't a please can you do us a favour and take it down? I've had a call from the chairman and he wants it gone. And the threat was that I would be issued with a legal letter if it was not removed. Now, I will be very upfront on how I responded to that. First, I said that I did not believe that there was anything inherently libelous in the article because I do not write, "This is the truth." Truth and fact don't even really bear a resemblance to each other. Facts you can get wrong, and I'm always happy to correct any fact that I get wrong. I'm happy to hear when I get a fact wrong because it allows me to correct it and allows me to present a more complete version of events. Truth, on the other hand, is a much bigger thing than fact, and I never ever claim to have a monopoly on truth.
He's been silenced. He's been silent. As Peter Lawwell got in the stream, James, you froze. James, could you go back a wee bit? Because you froze there just a tiny bit. Could you go back to?
No. Where was I?
Could you just tell us about the moment that you were told that this was going to be a problem? This blog, the moment that you were
it was about 9:30 this morning. Yeah, it was about 9:30 this morning, and I was told to remove it because the chairman had read it and wasn't happy about it, and there would be a legal consequence if I didn't remove it. So I told the person I was speaking to that I defended it on the grounds that first I'm an opinion writer and I don't claim to have a monopoly on the truth. If I've got facts wrong, I will correct facts. I will always correct facts if I get them wrong, right? And I enjoy when people tell me you've got that wrong, please correct it. It allows the picture to be more complete. But I also said that if I removed it, that I would have to explain why, and that I would explain why. And that wasn't a very popular suggestion, let's just say. That didn't go down terribly well. But at the end of the day, I think I'm going to do this in a manner that he probably won't expect, that Celtic probably won't expect, because I want to try and correct some misconceptions first. This wasn't Celtic. This was one guy. This was the chairman. And I am very conscious of having, I won't say a relationship. Because it's not a relationship. I try not to have too close a relationship with anyone at Celtic. But I have a complicated sort of history with Peter. And much the same as my opinions on Neil Lennon, they have been twisted and misconstrued by a lot of people who don't understand the actual context. Neil Lennon as a person, I love dearly and would take the proverbial bullet for. Neil Lennon as a manager got the criticism that he deserved as a manager. And Peter Law as the chief executive got every bit of criticism he deserved as chief executive. But my feelings on Law as a man are much more complicated than that. I know that he's done a tremendous amount of good, not just for Celtic, but for Scottish football, that's not even understood by people. I mean, I'll give you a case in point, and it's quite an extreme case in point at that. The firebombing of his house. I spoke to someone who is acquainted with similar situations and the underlying issues there. And I can tell you that was as a consequence of a tremendous service that man was providing to Scottish football. A tremendous service, a great personal sacrifice. So I know what that man is. As a man, I know what he's done. And I know what he's passionate about. And I know that he's not the people who describe, the article I read about him describes him as like a pantomime villain stroking a white cat. I've never seen him like that. I don't see him like that. I can look at his record at Celtic and I can see the tremendous things that he's done at the club. He's been an amazing ambassador for the club at UEFA and the ECA. He's been tremendous at helping raise revenues. In terms of business, his record is impeccable. But we also know, and it's a documented fact, that there are issues, and there have been issues, that go back to his time as chief executive, where he didn't get everything right, let's just say. And I think that a lot of scrutiny that could have been given at certain times wasn't given because of other circumstances, such as the role in the departure of Brendan Rodgers. Now, there was good and bad on both sides, but at the time, Brendan Rodgers came off worst and got the most criticism. So as I say, it's just complicated. It's really complicated. And I feel kind of queasy about the idea that I have upset that guy to this extent, because it's a tremendous overreaction on his part. A tremendous overreaction. And it's not and I would not want an adversarial relationship with anyone at Celtic. Had that call been, you have got facts wrong, can you correct this, can you print this, can you? I would have done that in 2 seconds and I wouldn't be sitting on here tonight. But it was a threat, which is different. And I had no choice but to respond to that. I've got no choice but to respond to that. There cannot be a perception that the club can tell bloggers what to do or individuals at the club can tell bloggers what they can write. We can't allow that at home.
So at this juncture, James, like, censorship by a club on fan media is obviously distasteful. You could probably use a stronger word for that. So at this juncture, you've had to withdraw the blog. Now, I never got to read it, but I did listen to an audio clip that was sent to me. So I've listened to it in its entirety, and there was a lot of good points that you raised, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with a lot of those points that you raised. So at this juncture, whenever you feel that you need to respond, perhaps to protect your own integrity, is maybe this not the platform for you to say? Have you made up your mind how you're going to respond in turn?
Well, the article's down and I'm happy to leave it down. In fact, the version of the article that's up just now that says this article has been removed, I'm happy to leave that for posterity, because that should be my response. That is an appropriate response. I've done what I was asked to do, but I've done it in a fashion that will leave it forever. That will make a point. That will make a point that something has happened here that we should all be concerned about.
Yeah, you've been strong.
The article itself is gone but not forgotten. Let's just say, what has happened in the last 12 hours or so has been as classic an example of the Streisand effect that we could ever have seen. Right? I don't know how many readers that article had at 9 o'clock this morning, but it's had a fuck of a lot more of them since, even though it's no longer online. So, people who would never have been interested in it and would never have read it and would never gave it a second thought probably now know every single word of it.
Yeah.
And it was such a self-defeating strategy. And as I say, I am slightly queasy about the idea that I've made someone feel like that I've put someone under the kind of scrutiny that makes them genuinely uncomfortable or genuinely angry. And just for that reason, I'm happy to leave it offline. I'm happy to remove it. Just for that reason alone. It doesn't make me comfortable knowing that someone at the institution that I care so much about feels like that. And a guy who, by his own words, feels exactly the same way about that institution. All I have tried to do is raise legitimate questions about the roles that people play at the club and the extent to which none of us know any of this stuff. This is the thing. We're told that this is true and that is true. We're told that this is false and that is false, right? But other than that, we have no direct and clear information on what goes on inside Celtic. None of us do, because the club communication strategy is abysmally poor at times. There is no, there are clubs where you can actually go on their website. Now, I think it was one of the other bloggers was on Graham Spears with me last year, and he was talking about a piece he's researching about clubs our size and their standing in Europe and the strides they've made compared to ours. And I really want to read that when he publishes it. But he said that there are clubs where you can go online and download the strategic 5-year plan. And we don't have anything like that. We make decisions in a way that no one understands and no one has any access to at all. And some of those decisions are questionable at best. Questionable at best. And because of these decisions and because of the way that the silence has descended from the club. I mean, one thing about Peter when he was chief executive that was an absolute fact is that you could rely on that guy being in the media for like wide-ranging interviews 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, whenever there was something, that a message the club wanted to send, he would get front and center. And he was exceptionally good at that. And that's one of the things that we miss. Michael Nicholson, there are people who may think that Michael Nicholson's low-profile role is a better fit for Celtic and a better look. And it certainly makes the manager more or less the central point of the club. But Law was excellent at that. Law was excellent at communicating what was happening and how the club was thinking. We don't have anything like that any longer. And that creates a vacuum, and people will always fill a vacuum. And this one is just filling with white noise and white noise and white noise and white noise. And all I'm trying to do, all I did try and do, and all I continue to try and do, a lot of us try and do, is make sense of the white noise and decide where we are. But the real problem is perception. And I was involved in political activism for a long time, and I'm a political geek, right? And I read political memoirs and I read books about political strategy, and I watch YouTube videos of strategists talking about campaigns. I'm a campaign obsessive. And one of the great political truisms is that you don't allow a negative perception ever to take hold, because once it does, it's virtually immovable. Our club had choices that it could have made other than hiring the former chief executive's assistant to be his replacement when Dominic Mackay left. We could have done a major search and brought in a top-class candidate, and we recruited from within, and that was a problem straight away. That created a perception problem. Now, the difficulty with a perception problem is it's much tougher to shift perception than it is to change reality, because if people believe something in their heart of hearts, facts won't change it. Nothing will change it. Except if you can then, and it takes a long time, if you can then create a different perception. But no sooner was Michael Nicholson in the job than we hired Mark Lawwell. Now, of all the candidates out there in world football, was Mark Lawwell the absolute best person for that job? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. But even if he had been, the very hiring of Mark Lawwell creates another perception problem. It creates the impression, whether true or false, it does not matter. It creates the perception that the club is run as a tiny, tiny unit that does favours for its mates, that hires its family members, all that stuff. That is a serious, serious problem, and we should never have put ourselves as a club in that position. And then we go and make it even worse by bringing Peter Lawwell himself back as chairman. So if people believe that there is some kind of underlying thing going on here, they believe it because it looks like shit, and there's no way to defend it on the grounds of, we had no choice. These were the best options. I don't believe they were the best options. And even if they were the best options, any good organisation with a strategic outlook and who understood the perception problem would never have done that. So that's
can I jump in a wee bit here, because people are saying in the comments, well, Sam From is like, we're going to be discussing the game tonight, and obviously Bernardo's signing and things of that nature. There is positives to talk about, but I think in the main, for me, the reason why I kind of want to break this down, let it breathe a wee bit, is because there's an element, as Gavin said, of censorship from people at Celtic not happy with someone's opinion, and they're told to kind of close that down, which doesn't actually sit well with me, because an opinion is what you feel personally. It's, as James JP was saying there, it's not a fact. It's not you're discussing anything personal about that individual. And I think we can all see, and probably all agree in the comments as well, that we're in the greatest financial position as a club that we've been in probably in my lifetime. We're sitting with millions upon millions in the bank gathering dust, and we just managed to scrape Bernardo over the line, and we're still chasing Alameda. And in that kind of that voice clip that I was sent today, it made me laugh. There was a line in it said about the global search only Celtic can undertake when they're searching for people to fill these positions. It's true. We always end up landing on a familiar second name or a familiar person who's been in and around the club at one point of their lives. And I've always been under the impression that Lawwell came back quietly, and then ever so slightly his influence started drip feeding back into the club. I think Galvin's the way to make sure Lawwell's all right, but his influence started dripping back into the club at one point or another, especially the shift when Mark Lawwell came in. Peter obviously came back. Then again in that voice clip was the transfer windows changed drastically, and the change really for the bad. And I do want to get everyone's opinion of. Obviously, JP, you've kind of give a great detailed landscape of what happened, and people like Mark Tierney, Monty in the comments want you to put that article back up. But I know that you're kind of sitting there and you said what you said, and it's going to stay. The article in Roost section will stay for people to see. And see, to be honest, you're 100% right. I started noticing when I was refreshing Twitter, people going, there's been articles took down, there's been this, there's been that. It actually gained you more traction in a roundabout way in terms of what actually happened in the events that led to that. But I do want to bring James in as well. What's your kind of opinion so far on what's been happening? And censorship isn't a good thing, especially if it's someone's opinion. And we're not all blind. We can see the drastic changes that took place over the last couple of years.
No, 100%. And like you're saying, look, a lot of it is opinions, and people are going to have different opinions. And I never get a chance to actually read the blog on the website. I was the same as I think the same as all actually with the audio clip. But obviously you can take the gist of it, and there wasn't anything personal in it. And if, to be honest, it's things, obviously the way it's laid out, and obviously in the timeline fashion, highlights it further in terms of obviously him leaving that period as away and then coming back. But it's discussions that you'll hear at Parkhead, you'll hear in supporters buses, you'll hear in pubs, you'll hear it on here. You just hear supporters in general, and it's not to say everything. Like, my opinion is 100% right. Of course, you think your opinion is spot on, but the reason that we need to have kind of that discussion, and as I say, everybody will have different opinions. It is because there is a lack of transparency at the boardroom level, like you're saying, and then when we get kind of wee bits thrown out like from boardroom level, and it's just like, are we really getting took as being that gullible? Like, I think you actually referenced these certainly in the clip that we heard anyway. It was the Lobel Junior coming in on the recommendation of Ange Postecoglou. I mean, even at the time, anybody could have told you that was due to the City Group links. Also, the same kind of method that we go Ange through, and obviously the surname is the obvious link there as well. The other one was firstly Ange Postecoglou coming in. I think it might have actually been at the interview. Don Mackay gave us some spiel about how he took notice of Ange when he was on a tour of Japan for the rugby. Or there was a story in there, and you're like, right, no bother, this is your first job in football, but you've plucked this guy out that was managing in the J League, and he's walking into the Celtic manager after chasing Eddie Howe for so long. So it is all going to be opinions. If the club was just even a fraction more transparent at boardroom level, then we could get on board with things. And look, and again, this isn't just to piggyback off obviously the article as well. We've said it on here umpteen times. We've had discussions about it. We've had arguments about it in the group chat. It doesn't matter if it's in the boardroom. It doesn't matter if it's on the park, in the dugout, in the youth setup. The amount of times, as James puts it, we can embark on a global search and the person that fits the criteria for the job is either already in the building or has been in the building in the past is wild. And the fact that we keep doing it, and obviously there is that jobs for the boys culture, which I think is undeniable. Aye, but I'm going off in tangents, obviously, but aye, just the fact that having listened essentially to the article, as I say, what I took for it, there was some bits, to be fair, when I think it was a John McGinn transfer that you were referencing, and you said that Celtic had essentially allegedly asked him to wait for a year and then basically sign on a free. That was news to me, to be fair. I didn't know that. I just always thought it was down to no one to pay up for him. So as I say, but having listened to it, I didn't hear, there was nothing that I feel that was damaging, if obviously in a kind of legal sense. It was just opinions, and as I say, it's things that you've got to think the board are sitting at Parkhead with their fingers in their ears, because it's discussions that you'll hear, and as I say, in Parkhead, supporters, buses, pubs, anywhere. It's discussions that you'll hear there. So, to be honest, having, obviously, I know we were talking about it in the group chat and it got pulled before any of us could read it, but when I actually listened to it, I must admit, I was expecting something worse, if that makes sense. And then when it got to the end, I was kind of like, was that it? Like, I don't mean that like any disrespect to yourself, but I just mean in terms of, like, I thought there was going to be something like a kind of smoking gun gotcha moment. Do you know what I mean? But there wasn't anything like really kind of bad there.
No,
there was. James, there was a couple of things that I took away from it, and it kind of echoed some of the questions that I had. And the events over the past couple of years about Dom Mackay leaving, whenever he first came to Celtic, and you spoke about the press conference that you were at with him and Ange, it did seem like an exciting new beginning, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and there was no official explanation as to why that had happened, and it was open to fans to speculate. And I was wondering, was Dom Mackay some sort of false prophet? Did we believe in him where he never really had the credentials? Was he a talker and not a doer? Was he found out? And then with Peter Lawwell leaving and then kind of sneaking in through the back door a few months later, very, very strange to see. However, there is something I would like to kind of ask you, and I'll be annoyed if I don't. It was regarding the actual your experience of the Celtic fan media so far. Now, look, from an insider looking in, is it fair to say that you have to compromise your principles whenever you get there in terms of the questions that you want to ask compared to the questions that you're willing to ask in order to maintain that access to these events? Because whenever you think of press conferences from a professional journalistic point of view, from newspapers and so on, they can ask questions that they want, and they can ask difficult questions, and they can provoke managers and who else, and that's their job. They don't have any integrity unless they're doing that. That's their mandate. They should be doing that. And if they get blocked, which is what we've seen that at Ibrox, that they've been blocked. But sometimes bad publicity is good publicity for those newspapers or whatever. But it's their job to ask the harsh questions. They're not doing their job if they don't. But whereas with Celtic fans who have been given this channel to the club, it's a bit false in a way, as I said, from an outsider looking in, because if you ask the wrong questions, you'll have your privileges revoked and you won't be back to the top table. What was your experiences of that, and what do you think about my opinion of that particular thing where you can't ask the questions that you really want to ask?
Well, that's why I wanted to say at the very beginning that this is not Celtic, and I wanted to correct that misconception, because this was not the club. Someone from the club called me and asked me to do this, but it was after a request from the chairman. This wasn't Celtic telling me to do this, and Celtic, to the best of my knowledge, has never placed any restriction on any of the fan media outlets from asking what they want. Now, the person who's responsible for putting together the fan media rota, and I hope that person won't mind me telling this story.
Too late now.
That person sent an email yesterday, I think it was, saying that the road was being put together, but names would get picked at random for the press conference for this morning. And I asked that person not to include me in the random draw, because I said the way I feel right now, what should be a press conference about the start of the season and possibly about unveiling a new signing, you do not want someone like me in that room on that day, on the first day, the first press conference in the new season, asking those questions. So do not include me, because I genuinely do not want to be there and bring the atmosphere down and bring the whole thing down with the questions that I would ask. And maybe that's self-censorship, but for the benefit of everyone else who was going to be there, I thought it would be better not to be. But Celtic would never have imposed that restriction on me. They never have anyway. I mean, it's obviously people at the club know what I write every single day. And they've never objected to a single thing that I've written. I've written much worse pieces than the one I wrote this morning. As I said, the Ange Postecoglou articles, when he was appointed, were so bad. They were so negative that I was astounded to be invited to that. Absolutely astounded to be invited to that unveiling. But that was the first year they were doing the fan media conferences. I was really shocked that they invited me. But I went along anyway to see what it was like. And it was good. No, they've been very, very fair about it. I know there are a lot of people who try and cultivate a close relationship with the club. The person who I spoke to this morning actually said your access and stuff isn't restricted, and we're not talking about anything like that. He said, but you I know you prefer to keep your distance anyway, and I do. I don't think a close relationship with the club is a good idea, doing what I do, because you don't want anything that's going to compromise your view. You don't want anything that's going to restrict what you're prepared to say.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think as well. So sorry, Gav, but I think as us as a podcast, we've never been invited, and I think there's probably a multitude of reasons why. Like JP, you listen quite a lot. You've been on before. Obviously, Tony, Anthony.
Process by which you have to apply, because the email I got the other day about the rota said that the number of fan media outlets who have applied to the club is so large now that the rota this year is going to be more thinly spread than it's ever been. I completely get that. Completely get that. I know people who have been waiting on their invite, and I know people who scorn the very idea and wouldn't sully themselves to attend them. Fair enough.
Can we talk about something as well? Look, we're obviously, Gav, I'm conscious we don't want to labour on the same point and go over it, but there's one thing I can't quite shake, and the feeling hasn't left me. Maybe, James, you're the same in terms of why are Celtic sitting on so much money and not spending it? That's one thing I don't understand. And over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed that Rodgers, like you said, JP, he's referencing names now. It seems like he's trying to put that pressure on the board to make some sort of advancements or some sort of, I don't know, advancements in the deals that he wants. And it is a strange situation. And Tim McTim, what a name, was in the comments saying he's just here for the toxic energy. Look, trust me now when I say this, Tim, we're not being toxic. We're being real. We're being realistic.
No,
we're laying out the issues that are plain for everyone to see, and for everyone who questioned it, we're just giving a platform for everyone to vent. But I mean, come on, we're sitting on near £100 million in the bank. We've got to be doing far more with it. And I just want to know, does anybody have any notion, JP, James, Gavin, why we're sitting?
Well, I felt one theory that having more money in the bank raises the share price. Now, I'm no financial expert, but I don't believe that. I don't know why we're holding that money. I don't think it's responsible. You bring in money to spend and grow. We're not growing as a club just simply by keeping money in a bank account. I don't believe that it's for a dividend purpose, having money in the account. Maybe anyone else has got a take on it, but I disagree with that theory.
Well, there is a theory that we're being fattened up for a takeover, but I don't know if that's. I don't really know if that's true.
Did you hear that? I heard that as well.
There's a lot of talk about it, but there, whatever you think of the guy, right? And again, complicated relationship, which is much more complicated than a lot of people are aware. Paul Brennan put up a piece this morning, the inference of which, if I'm reading it correctly, is that much of the money is being earmarked for infrastructure in and around the stadium. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think that there is a rather odd set of priorities if the club is prioritising that over the team on the pitch. I think you do one, then you do the other, and they've got the order slightly wrong. I think they subscribe to the if we build it, they will come theory. But if nobody wants to come, then it doesn't matter what you build. So I don't know whether
James, what about yourself? Any theories?
Hopefully they'll do something with fun.
I just assumed that we're going to splash the cash in August. Obviously, there's still time left in the transfer window. So, what is it? 90 million we've got to spend. So, we'll go on a wee football manager takeover kick here in August, and that'll be us. But no, it's, as I say, I think it was last week I said I'm by the moaning stage for this transfer window. I don't even think I started at moaning. I said last year we had all that money sitting there. If we weren't going to spend it last year with Rodgers coming back, then we never will spend it. So I can't say I'm surprised. I don't get me wrong, I still do think we'll see another couple signings coming in, but I still think it will fall short what's realistically required. And to be honest as well, the reason that we actually need so many signings this summer to improve is because of the failure that's been the last two transfer windows as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, gents, we are going to move on to the actual transfer window. We had the news that Bernardo signed. However, I'm going to do a little change of tone, and then we'll move on to that subject.
Now, is Lawwell coming on? JP, prepare. Sorry, mate, we didn't tell you.
I haven't spoken to the man in a while, so it would be interesting.
Imagine.
I think it was 2 weeks ago. It was Stephen and James and myself who were on, and we did the winner stays on in terms of Celtic centre forwards. And I started off with a name, then I gave you a new name and who would be the best, and you continue on until you've got one final name. And so, Stephen, it was yourself, and we went through the Celtic strikers. We took out Henrik Larsson because, well, you know what the final result's going to be if you leave him in. So I think that you settled on Chris Sutton. Now, James. Little James, we're going to. I'm sorry, mate. Sorry, I'm joining the bandwagon with that name. So I'm going to get your thoughts on this one, and we're going to focus on for this evening Celtic wide men. Now I'm using the word wide men, not traditionally wingers, but just wide men in general. Okay. Now I may have been give me a bit of latitude if I've included some attacking midfielders within this, okay? But I think it's because they might have been deployed on the wing. So, you know the drill. We're going to start off, and it's a quick fire thing, okay? So I don't want you to be pondering audibly from one name to the next. So we're just going to quick fire through, and we're going to start off with Johnny Hayes or Oliver Burke.
Johnny Hayes.
Johnny Hayes or Gary Mackay-Stephen.
Johnny Hayes.
Johnny Hayes or Simon Donnelly?
Simon Donnelly.
Simon Donnelly or Ross Wallace? Simon Donnelly or Mikey Johnson?
Fucking anybody. Me. Simon Donnelly.
Simon Donnelly or Niall McGinn?
Simon Donnelly.
Simon Donnelly or Bobby Petter?
Oh, Simon Donnelly.
Simon Donnelly or Steve Guppy?
Steve Guppy. I like Steve Guppy.
Ooh. Okay. Steve Guppy or Mohamed El Yunusi?
El Yunusi.
Okay. Mohamed El Yunusi or Liel Abada?
Abada.
Liel Abada or Paddy McCourt?
Abada.
Liel Abada or Paddy Roberts?
Abada.
Liel Abada or your man, Lewis Palmer?
My man Lewis Palmer.
Jesus!
Your man Lewis Palmer or Sean Maloney?
Sean Maloney.
Sean Maloney or John Collins?
I'll go Sean Maloney because John Collins is a wee bit before my time.
Sean Maloney or Scott Sinclair?
Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair or Craig Bellamy?
Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair or Alan Thompson?
Alan Thompson.
Thumper, Alan Thompson or Jota?
Alan Thompson.
Alan Thompson or Paulo Di Canio?
Alan Thompson.
Alan Thompson or Didier Agat?
Alan Thompson.
Alan Thompson or Dyson Maida?
Alan Thompson.
Alan Thompson or Aidan McGeady?
McGeady.
Aidan McGeady or James Forrest?
Oh, James Forrest.
James Forrest.
He's right here.
James Forrest or Shinsuke Nakamura?
Nakamura.
There we go.
I'd have to go with it.
Would we all concur? Would you rank for anything different? Aye, so Nakamura. Nakamura, that was the final name.
One of my favourite.
For me, that's you have to end the Nakamura. Like, he was nominated for a Ballon d'Or. No, I played for Celtic. The guy was just pure quality. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Incredible.
Excellent. Right, well, good choice, Stephen. Sorry, James. I tried to ramp up the quality as we went on. As you would notice, starting with people like Oliver Burke and Gary Mackay, Stephen.
That's debatable because I seen Palmer was somewhere in the middle. So,
King Louis. Right, okay. So we're going to move on to Paulo Bernardo. He finally signed a very, very protracted transfer target throughout the summer. Now, we have our own thoughts and opinions of how that this came to be, why it took so long. But I want to actually get your thoughts on the player himself. Steve, I'm going to start with yourself. So last season, he had some big game contributions. He brings a bit of physicality to the midfield, which we're probably lacking. He did go arguably in some spells of the season. Whenever Hatate came back from injury and Cal McGregor came back from injury, then Bernardo was back on the sidelines. However, you certainly do endear yourself to the fans whenever you score a goal against the Rotten Mob. So, first off, do you think that going into this season, assuming that there's no departures in the midfield, do you think that he's nailed on to be a squad player? And do you think it just simply strengthens the squad? Is it somebody that you can get excited about? And does he have that Celtic mentality?
I mean, first of all, again, we've all spoken about how we feel about this transfer. And I've listened to a few Celtic podcasts, I've read a few articles, and you can't help but feel, meh. I'm happy it's done now. The whole excitement around it is gone because it took so long, right? But parking that to the side, I believe he is could be a good player in the future. I believe that he will be a squad player. You asked me about, does it strengthen the squad? No, I just believe it's standing still with the same quality and depth that we had in the midfield department last year. Obviously, excluding any departures like O'Reilly or Rio Tate. There was rumours about both of them. But I like him. And the burst of physicality that we've seen in the cup final is what I want to see more of. It took him maybe, I don't know, the first part of the season he was bedding in, and the second part he really started to show what he was about. I think he's very athletic. I think he gets around the pitch. I think he's very like a dogged player. I wouldn't say he drips of quality, but he does the tough jobs, and he can certainly chip in with a few cracking goals. And like I said, that burst of speed and athleticism. And Rodgers is very big on athleticism, and especially for the European game, and he seemed to trust him a lot in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's a good signing to get back on board. It's one that I'm happy with. But again, the excitement was took away very, very quickly for me. And I do want to address one thing. I've got my daughter in the comments here, which is quite funny. You should be in bed, chicken. You should be sleeping. So please get to sleep. But yeah, it's that just kind of threw me off a bit. But yeah, it's a good signing. I'm happy he's in the door, and I'm looking forward to seeing he can produce in the future for Celtic.
And to James Forrest, kind of building on the thoughts of Stephen. So it was certainly a protracted summer target. Yeah. We got there in the end. If I was to kind of read between the lines, I would have imagined that the negotiations would have been a high amount of money, maybe 6 million perhaps. But we managed to reduce that, mitigate it down to 3.5. But the catch to that, the caveat was a 30% rumoured sell-on clause, which for me, I'm happy at because I don't actually know the guy's ability, his ceiling ability-wise. I don't know how far this guy could go. He's 21 years old. For one season at Celtic, he's acquitted himself okay. What do you think about this guy's ability, his potential? Do you think he'll be with Celtic for the course? Where do you see him in the next few years? What contribution that he can make? Another thing that's I asked Stephen about strengthening the squad, he said that we're kind of standing still. I'm comparing us having Turnbull as a squad player a few years ago. Now we've, in my opinion, upgraded him with Bernardo. So where do you see his impact over the next few years? What's his ceiling? And do you think we are strengthening the squad, or do you think we're standing still?
Well, I got myself in a bit of trouble on this subject earlier in the window. When see a lot of people are going to say that I contradicted myself on this one, but I really haven't. I've tried to maintain a consistent sort of viewpoint through this. At the start of the window, when people were talking about us buying him and Ida for £12 million for 6 million each, I said, be careful what you wish for, because we are, knowing this club, we are working with a limited budget. Just because there's tens of millions in the bank doesn't mean we're going to spend tens of millions. So £12 million is a huge amount of money to spend on two players just to be where we are right now. And because I used the words to stand still in the piece, I got a lot of stick for that by people who seem to be under the misconception that if we sign those two in permanent deals, we're somehow stronger than we were last season. But I don't understand that way of thinking. But yeah, I think it's a move to stand still. It's not been as expensive a move to stand still as it would have been had we paid £6 million for him. And again, I get myself in trouble for this because a lot of people think that I'm saying we should just have paid the £6 million and got it done quickly. I think we could have done it a lot more quickly than 50 days. But I am glad that we didn't pay £6 million for him. Whether he is a £6 million player, time will tell. But I think it's interesting that Brendan liked him in Europe and trusted him on that stage. So Brendan sees something there in terms of a big game player, and bringing him on in the cup final at the time he did was the moment that changed the game, and it was really smart from the manager. So the manager knows there's a player. My real regret it's taking so long is that with the way the team is playing, with the way the team played in pre-season, it's obvious that Brendan is drilling these guys in a different way than he was last season, and he's more comfortable with the guys who are here, and they're more comfortable with him. I mean, James, your man Palmer was a superb case in point. I thought he did an excellent pre-season. And the manager was really critical of him last season for the weaknesses in his game, including his willingness to track back and stuff. And I thought he did all that superbly well on the American tour. And it's going to be great to see how he fits into the team. I would have loved to have seen what changes he would have brought to Bernardo's game, because I don't know if he was convinced that Bernardo was entirely suited to the way the team plays, except in Europe where the team plays a different way. But bringing him on in the cup final suggests that he had adapted himself to the team a bit more by then, and that Brendan had the confidence that he could come and turn the game. So I'm not surprised that Brendan wanted him, and Brendan put a lot of time into convincing the board to pay and get him. I think it's a good. I think
one of the mad thing, as I get my composure back after that, is that he's not even match fit, which I found quite amusing. It's just like, you do all that legwork and he can't even be in the squad for the game. It's a shame, to be fair, but yeah. Just wanted to throw that in, Gav.
No, I wrote a really sarcastic. As you say, it's kind of more downbeat than it should be, which is, as I say, why I did not want to be at the press conference today, in case, you know, it was a kind of unveiling and I spoiled it by asking a stupid question. Because I said I wrote a really sarcastic kind of welcome to Celtic piece last night, which wasn't sarcastic about him, but just sarcastic about how long it's taken and whatever. And the one serious thing that I said in that piece was that we should bed in for being a bit more patient, because it's taken 50 days to get him here, and we're going to have to wait even further, because he's not going to be anywhere near ready to step up to where Brendan would expect him to be. He's been training in Portugal, but he's not going to be up to the standard that the rest of this team is right now. That's going to take a week or so, unfortunately.
And we've got obviously somebody's drunk in the comments. He's going to be a Rui Costa Mark II. He'll be fine. Even if you were to reduce the standards slightly from Rui Costa, we've got the previous compatriots of George Cadet and Jota as well. James, little James, we are talking about the potential that Bernardo, the potential Bernardo has.
I'm so happy.
The thing that Bernardo, he can have, again, caveat that he's 21 years old, but he's got the physicality, but does he have the dig? What's his main defining quality? He looks to be slightly tidy on the ball. What do you see his main attribute to be?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. He's kind of like an all-rounder. Look, I'm not going to change my opinion because he's signed. Like I said last year, I think we suffer for a wee bit of recency bias and just kind of remember the cup final. But I thought he was fairly average last year, especially at the start of the wee spell, kind of either side of Christmas, where he seemed to kick on a bit, and then it just kind of died off again. And then obviously, don't get me wrong, the run in the cup final was excellent because only one is the game essentially. But for the price we've got him, excuse me, that's gassy. For the price we've got him for, the kind of $3.5 million, I'm happy enough with it, but we've kind of kicked the arse with it with the length of time that it took. It totally killed the excitement. It's pretty much been a done deal for how long? For how long? But I'm happy enough. I still maintain that if Matt O'Reilly goes, Paulo Bernardo is the Matt O'Reilly replacement. I think if we sign another central midfielder, it'll be a totally different style. In the sense it will maybe be a big defensive midfielder. So it's a kind of middle of the road signing for me. I think he will get better, but at the same time, I do think he's going to need to get better to stake a claim in the team, because I don't think it's not that I think he's a bad player, but I just don't think he's particularly good either, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he can drift in and out. At the same time, you don't want to be overly critical because of his age. But at the same time, Matt O'Reilly is roughly about that age as well, and he's more advanced. He's no Zidane. Matt O'Reilly is not a Zidane, but he's a wee bit more advanced. By the way, calling you little James, and I'm sorry to hammer the point. Do you know the Oasis album, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants? Probably the worst track in that album is called Little James, and it was actually written by Liam Gallagher, and it is a shit tune.
Can anyone see James? Has he disappeared?
His picture's frozen again.
He's playing on a trampoline. That's one of the lyrics for Little James, written by Liam Gallagher. Christ. So, moving on from that. Hi, James. You okay?
I caught the tail end of that there, and I can't say I was overly enthused.
Can I throw something in? We're all having a laugh now, getting past all the serious stuff, right? but little James, he come up with a comment about he thinks Bernardo would be the bona fide Matt O'Reilly replacement, right? Now, JP, I don't know if I caught a glimpse. Did you write an article about this? Did you? Yeah, and I think there was a bit of bad language in the first part of it, wasn't there? I think it was something like that in the... Yeah. Do you think along the same lines that this is the paving the way for O'Reilly to be sold?
I don't think he's the type of player who's going to replace Matt O'Reilly in the team. I'm seriously hoping that if O'Reilly goes, that we have a plan to bring in an attacking midfielder, because the only player in the midfield who is capable of putting those kind of numbers on the board is Callum McGregor. And Callum McGregor's played in an advanced position. He's looked very capable of scoring goals for us from midfield. But I don't know if McGregor, even in his best season, has registered as many goals and assists as O'Reilly got last season. And so, I'm not even sure that will work. So, we've lost Jota, we've lost Abada, and that's a lot of goals to take out of the team already. And taking O'Reilly's goals, it's going to be incredibly hard to replace, incredibly hard. So, I don't know.
I need to come from somebody else.
I'm worried about that a little bit.
Talking of the transfer window thus far, one, if you were to try to take any positives from it, one kind of glaring thing for me is the fact that no project signings have been forced on Brendan Rodgers. Now, we've heard the Q word used so many times that we're not wanting quantity, we're looking for quality. And we're basically, barring the goalkeepers, we've brought in nobody apart from now Bernardo, who is a familiar face. I am trying to take some positives from the fact that nobody has been forced upon Rodgers, because he's probably said, you've been doing that tactic for the past 3 or so transfer windows. You're bloating the wages, the wage transfers. The wage budget that we have right now. We've got too many people. He likes to work within a set amount of players within a squad. It's bloated, too much wages spent on players who are not going to make a future at Parkhead. And I would like to think that that's positive, that we've not been forcing players on Brendan Rodgers. James, would you concur with that? Do you think that there has been a slight change in the strategy for recruitment, where we're focusing on, if we can't get the player that we need, then we won't get anybody at all? Or am I being wishful?
It really is hard to say. As we say, that Q word get through a lot in January as well, and we didn't really see it come to fruition. Regardless of how often we get told it's hard to sign players in January, don't front up saying that you're looking for quality for months and then basically we don't deliver it. So you'd like to think so, but history arguably tells us otherwise, to be honest. But I think you would like to think that they've have to realise as well. I mean, obviously the managers will know the glaring weak spots, so surely left back and left centre back at the very least has to be addressed, and it has to be guys ready made to walk into the first team. No kind of bargain basement quality Odin home type might make it, might know. We need ready-made players to come in and walk in and take positions. Otherwise, when it comes to like the Champions League and Europe in general, we are going to have been stalling still. If we got into it with the exact same squad that we went into with last season, exact same starting, easy for me to say, I'll try to my teeth in. If we go into Europe next year with the exact same starting 11, then we have essentially stood still. So I'd like to think in what's remaining, we will see a wee shift in gears and we'll kind of splash of cash on some first team players.
Stephen, in terms of the defence that James was talking about, the left back, we've not signed a left back. Now, I would have thought it'd be, I want to use the word easy. I don't know if I'm being flippant using that word, but I would have thought it would be manageable. If you wanted to, if Greg Taylor was going to be your first choice left back, I would have thought it would be fairly achievable to bring in an understudy for him. Do you think that the fact that we've not signed any left back at all tells you that we're only looking for proper quality, someone who is at least as good as Greg Taylor? Do you have hopes for that? Or do you think at the last moment we're going to bring in that guy who played for Dundee and Liverpool? What's his name?
Oh, God. Owen Beck.
Do you think it'll come to that? Do you think it'll come to that at the 11th hour? We'll bring in somebody of his calibre, or do you think with the silence, the days passing on and on, it's because we really are targeting quality? What do you see? What do you see the future for the left back, the competition for Greg Taylor? Where do you think it's going to be once competitive football properly kicks in?
I think we can dispel that myth that we're looking for quality. Okay, that myth needs to be parked at one side and kicked out to the curb, because that's not happening. Celtic at this moment in time don't have a transfer strategy. We've no head of recruitment. We've been left with the bones of a scouting team that still has the likes of Tosh McKinley on it, which is embarrassing, and that's no disrespect to him. But we should be evolving with the times and moving forward with the times. And people, like, you look at other clubs, the recruitment strategies, and like JP said at the start, they have 5-year plans. We've got recruitment teams, we've got data analysis teams, and Postecoglou was very, very heavy on that. When he was in charge, he wanted that all improved, and that seems to be just chucked to the wayside yet again. What we're relying on is Brendan Rodgers' contact book, is old links to previous clubs, as agents as well coming to the rescue. We have no detailed strategy, and I found it quite alarming that the little James, I'm only joking, but little James, as we'll have to call him in tonight's podcast, was always having a joke saying we'll be linked to Owen Beck, or we could bring in Owen Beck at the end of the window. That's what's going to happen. And then in the last couple of days, it's caught fire. And usually in these instances, there's no smoke without fire. And that tells me we've had no strategy for the left back position. I cannot believe the notion that within world football, never mind European football, world football, there is no one that we can find to at least challenge or better Greg Taylor. And it won't break the bank. I believe we could find an equivalent to Greg Taylor quite easily with the right scouting team in place, the right procedures in place. But at the moment, we don't have that. And as I said, it all goes back to the strategy. It goes back to your future proofing, your planning, and it's all went. It has went. I'm fed up. I am fed up, right? And I've been holding in for quite a while. I've tried to be patient. We were told it was because of the Euros were on. We were told the Copa America might be playing an influence in this. And now it's Rodgers changing the goalposts, where he's given the board to the end of August. He's changed his time frames 3 times within this transfer window. His ideal situation was to get at least 2 or 3 players in before the American trip. He got 2 goalkeepers. By the way, the revelation that Kasper Schmeichel that loose in his unveiling was he got a text 4 days after his Euro campaign ended from Rodgers personally to say would he come and join. Obviously, he would jump at that opportunity. Great signing, by the way.
Yeah,
not a patch on that. And then Sinsalo, which is good as well. And that is a good kind of move by the club, having that kind of protege learning from an experienced pro like Kasper Schmeichel. I'm all for that. But the neglect in and around the team, and I don't like when fans get divided, when we're told we're bedwetters, when we're told with no patience, when we're told we should be trusting the process. Let me get one thing clear right now. There is no fucking process. There's none. And that's the problem. If we have processes in place, we would have a list of left backs that we've been scouting for over 1.5 years, 2 years. We'll have a list of right backs we've been scouting for the same amount of time. And that goes across the whole pitch, from goalkeeper to striker. We should have contingency plans. We should have plans to improve in certain positions. And it's also like as well, and John, I can see in the comments, I'm not wearing a nappy, mate. I'm being real. This is what the track is, right? And we can see with our own eyes that the longer this transfer window goes on, even Rodgers himself is getting frustrated. And we'll go back to, he referenced Michael Nicholson. He spoke about Chris Mackay. He didn't have to. And he's quite clear. He knows there's negativity. He said it today. He knows there is negativity within the support with the fans at the moment in the transfer window. And you can't hide it. We're sitting on millions and millions of pounds in the bank. And look, this is another argument that I don't understand. People are thinking because people speak up, they want Celtic to spend 10 to 15 million pounds on a player. No, that's not what we're saying at all. But it's be ambitious. Let's see if we can push the envelope and get a couple of quality players that Rodgers was speaking about since he first came in the summer last year, right? You look at the recruitment window, and JP, you referenced it fantastically in that audio clip. None of them, bar one maybe, has made an impression on the team. Do you know, he doesn't fancy the 2 centre backs. He doesn't fancy anyone else to bring in. Lagerbielke and Narowski, people of that ilk, and we spent a lot of money on them individuals.
Yep.
And if we had the right scouting and recruitment team in place, we could identify players for that same maybe price bracket or a wee bit more who would come in and make a better impact. And I'm just so disillusioned by it all. I don't know how to feel. I know I'm ranting a bit here and I've had a couple of beers, but that's not the issue. I think that the real issue is here, we as fans can see the neglect that's happening to that squad. And we're not even standing still from last year. See the stand still from last year, we need to add Adamita back into the squad. We are effectively weaker than we were last year, which is embarrassing. It is embarrassing that we're in this position. And Rodgers banged on about it today in his press conference about we need to be better in Europe. There's no question about it. I think that's what kind of paraphrasing a bit. We need to be better in Europe with this new Champions League format. And are you trying to tell me he's confident getting into this format with this squad of players? Absolutely not. He's frustrated. He's named the individuals who is responsible, and it's the ball's in their court. And I will be very interested to see it happens at the end of August, and we're still in the same status quo.
See the Owen Beck thing. I don't say that as a joke. I genuinely think that is. I think that's what happens. I genuinely think that come deadline day, if we've no signed a left back, then Owen Beck will come in the door. And the reason I say that is because in January we were linked to the Portuguese left back, was at Araujo, and it was still kind of concrete link to a left back, which then fell through. And I'm sure I said on here at the time, Owen Beck kind of fell into our lap. Obviously gone and loaned to Dundee and looking really good. Nobody probably within the club would have known who Owen Beck was when he signed for Dundee. He's obviously went on to have a good spell there. Then it gets to the January. We're looking for a left back. We're linked to Araujo. I'm sure there was another one as well, but I can't remember the name. The deal.
Bueno at Wolves, who were linked to again.
Aye, the deals obviously didn't happen, and then the rumours about Owen Beck coming here started up again. Then obviously Liverpool played them in one of their games, so that removed that off the table. So for me, whilst Owen Beck hasn't signed for a club, I am of the opinion that we'll view Owen Beck as somewhat a kind of like a safety net. If we've got other targets, then if they fall through, like it seems to have done with Bueno, then we can always go after Owen Beck. And what I notice as well, and again, just my opinion, the left backs that we've been linked with, the left back that we've been linked with in Bueno, and then more the Owen Beck thing as well, it's 2 loan signings that we've been after. So, in my opinion, I think the end goal for Celtic is to get Kieran Tierney either on a free or on a cut price deal next summer, and we're just trying to bridge the gap that is this season until we can do that.
Kieran Tierney. That injury fucked him at the end of the Euros, didn't it? It really did it. Do you think there was proper plans to actually sign James to sign Kieran Tierney if that injury never occurred?
I would imagine so. And I say I'm only surmising that, but I just find it interesting that it is one of the 2 glaring weak spots in the team, and the Owen Beck thing I think is mere paper talk, but the 2 kind of links that we've had for that position are on loan, which I find bizarre. So I think that's what we're after. Bridge the gap for the season, then get Tierney in.
To James P, do you ever think Tierney will return back at Celtic?
If it was up to the majority of the fans, it would be done already. If it was up to, I think Rodgers likes him as a player and as a dressing room personality. But the bulwark against it, and the thing that means that I don't have too many sleepless nights worrying about it, is that Tierney himself has no intention of ever doing it. No intention of ever doing it. And he's made that clear on a number of occasions when he's talked about it. The last time being earlier in the window, just before he got injured as it happens, when he said that if he was ever going to make the return to Celtic, he would have to do it at a time when he felt he could be as good a player as he was when he was here the last time, because he would never want to create bad memories for the fans and for himself of what being a Celtic player was like. And I fucking loved that. That was the best thing that he could have said, because It would never be the same. Kieran is one of the players that I feel immensely sorry for, because he's never going to have the career that he should have because of injury issues and whatever. And it would be heartbreaking to see him come back to Celtic and see his name on the subs bench, or see him sitting in the stand when he should be on the pitch. It would be heartbreaking. It would be terrible. It's just the reason why I despaired for a long time at the idea that we would appoint Henrik Larsson as manager. I've got good memories of Larsson. Just fucking leave them alone. Leave them where they are.
100%. I don't like that. I think it's lazy, and people just lack of imagination, lack of football education, and just going back to get Larsson back as manager. And while you're at it, get Jordan Larsson back as your second choice striker. I hated that sentiment. People need to get rid of that. But, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's the whole thing about this podcast and the people.
Gav, can I throw something at you? Obviously, you're hosting on this evening, and it's been great so far.
Thank you, Stephen.
But again, that wasn't some sort of endorsement, like, do you know what I mean? But you know what I mean. It has been good and very entertaining. But we're going into a new season, right? Off the back of winning a double, and all the things that come with that. A fantastic pre-season tour in America, by the way, with that current squad, which has to be mentioned. But like we're speaking about tonight, I still can't help but feel there has to be something more. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel that from the fans, that they're not exactly... Obviously, we're buzzing Celtic's back again, but we're all of nearly a majority thinking that we as a club should be doing more to improve everything around it, and it just feels like it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, okay, it's totally been underwhelming, the transfer window. I hate to be that guy who says it, but it's not done yet. It's not done yet. Now, ideally, we would have done our main business by now. There's examples where, like, you could hurt to the Ange's first season, where at the very, very end, we bring in Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota, in the 11th hour, and they were the two players who really made the next 2 or 3 years possible, the success. So there's examples to cite to mitigate the negativity of this transfer window. But I think we're entitled as football fans. Like, we're emotionally driven. There's nothing wrong with losing the rag and swearing and shouting and bawling and saying, I've had it up to here with Celtic. It's a pattern after year, and there is a pattern after the past at least three transfer windows of inactivity. You could maybe say I could be guilty of forgetting anybody, but when was the last time that we made a proper signing apart from Alistair Johnson?
But that's the issue. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So again, we're seeing a repeat, but we've still got a few more weeks. What is it, 4 weeks until the end of August? But we should be bringing in people to start the domestic campaign. They should have been away to America with us to make those relationships with other players, to work on the training field, to embed Bendon's philosophy. Ideally, they should have been in then. Now we're playing a game in two days, and they're not going to be in. Maybe Adam Ida will be in by then, but the new players that we don't know about, the exciting players, they're not there. And then we're thinking we've got Champions League, and what is it, the 2nd of September, perhaps?
Yeah.
What's going to happen between now and then? And we're probably going to be bringing in people who might or might not have quality, but it might come too late. And they won't know the playing style. They won't have the relationships, and we'll be like a ship marooned at the sea. And we just won't have the fluency in the Champions League where we really need it. Look, this is a new format in the Champions League, and it's exciting times. But we're going in kind of like half-arsed. We really are doing it half-arsed. We should have done our due diligence at the start, and it seems like there's a power struggle at Celtic, and this is the This is the results right now. It's too late. It's too late. And I agree with you. It's underwhelming as fans. And look, you've got the background here for this podcast. If nobody's noticed, you've got the Celtic away top. You've got people who've already bought the home top. We're going to have a third top. We will probably have a special edition fourth top, which will not be worn competitively. The money men at Celtic are forecasting. They've already had the season ticket renewals. That's already been done. We're already forecasting the sales income from the three tops. But yet, the fans, the lifeblood of the club, have not yet been rewarded. Now, I'm at where we are, the 2nd of August. When I was like a wee guy, I used to get totally excited. Like, even though in the summer there'd be no football, I would get totally excited and carried away with transfer headlines. I would read it endlessly, and I would research whatever I could about the guys. But I guess before the internet, you never really had that opportunity. But you would get excited with all that, without the media coverage about who we would be bringing in. But there's been nothing. And after the last few seasons, I've got this apathy. It's not like I don't care about it. It's not like there's no feeling, but I just feel like I've been beaten into a position where I'll judge it at the end. I'll judge it whenever the Champions League kicks off, and at that point I might be raging. But now I feel like I've got no fire in terms of shouting and bawling, because there's been so little activity, so little. Like, only Brendan Rodgers is kind of fronting up at the media, and nobody's backing him up. And that's the kind of disappointing thing from a fan's perspective. So you're totally right, but I've got an apathy which is on the club's hands, that I feel like that, and it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah. No, again, I'm with you, and just to bring a couple of comments, because I've been flying in tonight. Your man, not mine, his man. We have had 3 automatic qualifications in a row, a money banked, and now a new Champions League with more money to earn the club have showed us zero ambition to go for it. Don't get fans with this blind faith. Yeah, that's what is kind of people. Look, again, people have their own prerogatives. We all know, like JP writes his opinions, and we all have our own opinions on this podcast. I genuinely don't understand how people can be still back in this board or back in this kind of process that we have at the moment. And Gav, I know you're saying there, judge it at the end, which is fair enough. But James, I think me and you, maybe Franny and a couple of others in the podcast, we knew straight away after the end of last year's transfer window in the summer that it was garbage. Couple of first eye looks on the players that we signed, and look, we can all jump to conclusions and blah blah blah, but we all kind of knew that the vast majority of players wouldn't be successful in Celtic. Rodgers, for me, was playing lip service to the fans and agreeing with the recruitment process, because everything had to be rosy in the garden for him coming back, and had to kind of lock hands and interlink with the kind of courses that the recruitment team was doing and he was doing. That ship sailed. And like what you said, Gav, I'll throw it back to yourself and you can take the reins again. There is a power struggle within the club, and it is very evident for everyone to see. I think the club wants to go still one direction, and Rodgers is trying to pull away from that and go in a separate direction.
Yeah. The fact that they've got the money in the bank right now, it's almost like the proof is in the pudding for the money men, and they're happy to follow that model. And Brendan Rodgers just came in and he spoke about it. Even last season, he spoke about the fact that it works what Celtic are doing, but if you want to progress on the footballing side as a club, then you need to take a bit more risks. And we have not witnessed that. We're not deviating from that pathway, the Peter Lawwell pathway. James P., I've made this, I think it's lost on other people. It's a movie reference I've made about The Godfather. I hope that you're aware of this. And it's with The Godfather Consigliere. The Consigliere is like the legal counsel, and he advises the family. He advises the family upon the criminal activities and the legal activities. And Tom Hagen, who was played by Jimmy Johnson's good friend, he was the peacetime consigliere. But whenever wartime came around, Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, he says to Tom Hagen, "We need to get rid of you because you're not a wartime consigliere. And we need to prepare for war. We need somebody who's aggressive-minded." And I compare that analogy to Peter Lawwell whenever Martin O'Neill had left, and we had the books to account for, we had the books to balance, and we brought in Peter Lawwell, who was an accountant by trade, a financier by trade, and that was his forte. And we balanced the books, and we managed to become self-sufficient as a club. And as you said in your blog, Dermot Desmond being the absentee landlord, he left Peter Lawwell in charge, and he did his mandate. He did that, but that was over 20. Well, that was roughly about 20 years ago, and I think that the club has moved on, and I think that Peter Lawwell has seen out his mandate, and I think that we no longer need him as a consigliere. We need to change the staff. We need to change the attitude. The climate is there. The environment is there. We need new blood, and it kind of happened a couple of seasons ago, but we brought in a new guy. Peter Lawwell left stage. He came in back in the other stage, and now we went back full circle. That was the analogy that I used, and that's my point exactly. Any thoughts?
Sonny Corleone says the two harshest things in that whole film, both of them, to Tom Hagen, when Tom's talking about negotiating a deal if the Don dies, and he says to him, "It's easy for you to say he's not your father."
Thank you. You're a movie fan. You're a movie fan. Thank you.
Later on, when they're talking, and again, when Tom Hagen is trying to urge him not to go crazy when he's planning to assassinate all the 5 family heads, and he shouts at Tom in the middle of the staircase in front of everyone, "Papa Hadjenko, look what I've got." And that was his wartime consigliere reference. And I completely agree with you. It's incredible how many people in the comments have mentioned Birger Melling's name, right? Because I was on the Spears podcast the other night, and I was talking about the Copenhagen team from last year's Champions League team. They had just won the double, and they needed to rebuild the left side of their team. They needed a central midfielder. They needed a striker. They signed Birger Melling from Rennes for £2 million. Mo Elyounoussi on a free transfer from Southampton. They signed the aforementioned Jordan Larson. And they signed a guy in the midfield, can't remember his name off the top of my head. But they went out and they got their 4 players. And what I said on the podcast was that the midfielder they signed was 25. Jordan Larson is 26. Birger Melling is 29 and Elyounoussi is 29. And because all of those guys are in those age brackets, we would never have signed any of them, because our policy as a club is to look for players under 23 with a certain amount of games under their belt and who are on a certain wage bracket. The reason being that we can get them cheap and develop them and sell them for a profit. And that is the thing. That's the club's policy. The club's policy is predicated on development and selling players for a profit. And if we just happen to win things as we're doing so, then that seems to me to be a bonus. But I know that we would never have signed those 4 players because they would all have been outside the policy. And Copenhagen finished top of their Champions League group. And that is everything that is wrong with us, summed up by one club and the way they do things.
I think the main takeaway really is that we've got to adopt a new approach and just start making offers that they can't refuse. Just to keep in line with The Godfather. That's my first, last and only reference to The Godfather. So there we go.
What's the one where he's stroking the cat? Is that in The Godfather?
That's The Godfather.
Aye. Yeah.
The best prop in history, in film history. A cat that wandered onto the set and Brando picked it up.
Aye, you're talking about film history. But if we think about Stephen's internet history, how many times a man has stroked a cat?
He gets funny when we masturbate about it as well.
You're fucking wee bastard.
Right, okay, we're going to move on to the Kilmarnock game.
Quiz.
Which we've got on Sunday. Now, I do have a quiz. It's not an extensive quiz. Now, for the people who have watched the podcast with me, Little James and Stephen, as soon as day falls night, James is always going to win quiz. However, the fact that we've got two Jameses on the podcast, I'm going to take advantage, and Stephen can just sit back with pride and watch and be entertained. So
it really infuriates me how you and McGinty think I have no knowledge. It baffles my mind, but it's go ahead, Gav.
You're going to see a show here then about no knowledge, because unless I've got an earpiece and Matthew Marr talking in it and telling me the answers, I'm not going to get very many of them.
And in fairness,
you're going to get a masterclass in no knowledge here.
In fairness to Stephen, it is more than Gavin McGinty that doesn't think he's getting any knowledge. So,
all right, little James, you wee dick.
Yeah, I just need to think of. I don't have OCD, but I've got 13 questions. I would like to get 14. What I've done is I've done one Celtic question and then one football question. Back to one Celtic, back to one football. So I want to get 14. I'm trying to think of a 14th question, which would be a football one. Maybe it should be a Gabriel Batistuta one, just to kind of.
Oh, Jesus Christ! By the way, you need to let that go.
He never won the Sudoku either, did he?
Right, we'll leave it in 13, okay? Because I can't think on the spot like that.
I'll give you one.
Well, you would have to tell me the answer as well.
Ah, well, we're fucked.
Well, unless you want to start it off, with a football question, and then I'll continue on with the rest of them.
Are we doing it now?
Aye. What bit of time?
So it's between JP and James. Is it whoever shouts out first? Yeah.
Pretty much whoever shouts out first. Yes. By the way, I wrote these questions thinking that Stephen was going to be involved. So
no,
James,
I'll set this one out and watch. It spares
no.
JP, you're in. JP, you're in. Right. So first question for James and JP. Tell me all the clubs that Lee Griffiths represented.
Celtic, Hibs, Wolves,
Dundee and Livingston,
and Madura City, or whatever they were called. Mandura City.
James gets that one. Galvey named more clubs.
Okay. Right. Question 2. Well, it's another Celtic question. Which player was nicknamed the Prince of Goalies?
John Thompson.
Question 3. How many British teams have won the European Cup / UEFA Champions League? How many British teams have won the European Cup / UEFA Champions League?
6. I'm going to say 6. Now I'm going to have to name them. Liverpool, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Notts Forest, Man United, Celtic, and Man City. 7.
Right, okay, you've got it. You went for it, and you've named all 7. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay.
Well done, JP. Well done.
Stephen, you keep count. I think that's 2-1 to Little James.
Yeah. Here,
Listen.
listen. I see one day when I see you, James. Oh, it's going to be mayhem.
Again, I made this quiz thinking that Stephen would be.
Why do you keep reiterating that point? Why do you keep saying this? It's fine. Just do the quiz.
Okay, which stand in Celtic Park was known as the Jungle?
The North Stand.
Okay. Question 5. Nobody will get this one. Who was the first non-European manager to win the English Premier League? Who was the first non-European manager to win the English Premier League? I believe that's question 5. Stephen, what's the score count right now?
3-1 to Little James. Was it Scolari? No. What do you call it?
Literally, that's what I was just about to say. Is a wild guess. I don't know if he won it with Chelsea, the old Brazil manager.
JP, it's in your court.
Scolari gets sacked because he didn't win it. Big Phil.
Someone else is going to get sacked tonight after this, I tell you. And I'm even, what the fuck? Non-European?
Non-European means that they're not European, such as...
Oh, fuck off, Gavin. I know that.
No. It's to the people in the viewers. They're saying fucking Arsene Wenger, like non-European.
Pellegrini?
Mate, you're fucking not involved in this.
I'm stumped.
Jesus Christ.
On that one.
Right, okay. Well, that one's a write-off. Stephen obviously just read from the comment.
No, fucking didn't, by the way. I said that before anyone came in, but okay, it's fine.
No, Franny McCarthy. McCart, sorry. There's no Mick. Franny McCarthy said it. Right, okay. Here's one. On the 28th of March, this is a Celtic one, okay. On the 28th of March, 1929, which event took place at Parkhead? A Celtic player was late for kickoff and commandeered a tram to make the game. B. Strathclyde police confiscated all tricolours at the turnstiles. Or C. A fire broke out, destroying a stand. So I'll repeat that. On the 28th of March, 1929, which event took place at Parkhead? A Celtic player was late for kickoff and commandeered a tram to make the game. Strathclyde police confiscated all tricolour flags at the stadium. And C, a fire broke out, destroying a stand.
I don't know. I'll go.
I haven't a clue.
Aye, C is a guess.
I'm going to go A as a guess.
I can't remember what C was, but I'll just say it.
This is actually a big part of Celtic's history. It was C, a fire did break out, destroying part of the stand, and it was where we kept a lot of the old photographs. So if you think about Celtic's history prior to 1929, a lot of the photographs were destroyed. Nothing was salvaged, and that was just like photographs and stuff like that. You know, if you think about what photographs we've got now, what photographs we lost.
See, to be fair, Gavin, you'd think that the recruitment team are using the data from 1929.
Yeah.
Matthew Marr, if you're sitting watching this tomorrow, I know you knew that, and I know if I had you in my earpiece, you would have told me.
Right, the next question. Who holds
4-1. It's 4-1, by the way.
Okay. Little James, you're doing well, but this is familiar territory for you. You're normally about this far ahead in a quiz. Right. World football, okay. Who holds the record for the most Serie A goals in a season? Now I'm going to give you a quiz. It's this century, not the previous century.
Clue, you mean? Not quiz. Clue.
That's got to be Ronaldo. I can't imagine that it's not Ronaldo at Inter Milan.
Little James.
I'll go. I'm torn between actually three, to be honest. I'm torn between Shevchenko. Fuck, who was I going to say? It was Shevchenko, Totti, and the one that I was going to say Adriano, because he had a great season, kind of flashing the pan away.
It was Gonzalo Higuain with 36 goals for Napoli in the 2015-2016 season. Wow. Moving on, how many managers and caretakers did Lubomir Moravcik play under at Celtic?
God almighty.
4.
Little James takes it. Little James takes it. It's Joe Venglos, John Barnes, Kenny Dalg, and Martin O'Neill.
Yeah.
Right. Next question.
Well, we could have had John Spencer.
It's a difficult one, man. Right. Miroslav Klose played for only one team outside of Germany.
Lazio.
Fuck off, James. You obviously do this before. Like, he's winding me up. You are sending each other. There's no way.
There we go.
Jesus Christ. James, what are you drinking? Is that Red Bull or something?
No, it's worse than that. Dark fruits. I'm kidding on. I'm 13 again. I say that, I should just accept that I drink it at this point because I feel as if I've got it every second week.
You do, all the time.
Right. A Celtic question. Which club did John Guidetti sign for after Celtic?
Celta Vigo.
Oh, 5-2. 5-2. Come on, JP. Come on.
Come on.
I had such a hard on for that guy as well, man. I so wish we signed him permanently.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, James, you've got previous with Guidetti. I don't know why you never got that. Can you explain your relationship with the man?
He said hard on, I can guess.
No. I honestly, I thought he was brilliant. I know it kind of turned sour at the end, but we were at the
sofa territory.
Play the year do one night. Obviously, it was Ronnie Dyler season, whatever year that was, and like the players just kind of mooch about at the bar. It was in the I think it was the Thistle Hotel. It's changed names now. And Scott Brown and John Guidetti walked out, and there was this crowd, about 100 people crowding around Scott Brown, and they're standing with John Guidetti. I'm like, you're fucking beauty. We up to John Guidetti. I've still got the picture. Love hearts and everything on
it. Right. Next question. Now, this is the closest to the number. Which year was the Copa America formed? Now, probably the tactical thing would be to hold off to see if one of you want to commit to a number.
I'll go first then if I'm willing. You can go higher or lower. I'll go 1940.
I'm going to go 1960.
It was 1916. A great year indeed. But little James takes it.
Fucking hell, that's mad.
1960 was the year that the Euros was formed, the Euro Championships.
There you are. Where was the World Cup?
The World Cup was like, James, 1930 something.
Yeah.
1930, aye, Uruguay.
Aye. Oh. Right, Celtic question. Which nationality is Christian Gamboa?
Costa Rica.
There we go.
James is scary, man.
Finger on the trigger.
7-2. 7-2.
Right, okay. Next question. In an international tournament, Frank Rijkaard famously spat on which German player?
I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
James knows this, but he's holding off the wait. He's holding off.
I'll take a guess. I'll say Andreas Brem, but I don't know. I don't even know if that timescale would match up.
Philip Lamb.
Stephen.
That timescale definitely doesn't match up.
James P.
Jurgen Klinsmann, I don't know. I'll have a guess.
It was another guy with blonde locks, but it was Rudy Voller.
A lot of shouts in the comments for Rudy. A lot of shouts.
Everyone in the freaking comments knew that.
And last question. Paddy Roberts was developed by which football club academy?
Fulham.
Oh my God. Fuck's sake. I wish I was in this quiz. I would have fucking ripped him up. Swear to God.
And spared me the embarrassment. Thank you. Yes.
Right. Okay. The quiz is over. James is, the winner once again. Right, okay, guys. James, well done, by the way. You've got a very, very good football knowledge. If I can get the word from my mouth. Right. Let's move on to what we've got coming up this weekend. Celtic play Kilmarnock Sunday, 4:30 in the afternoon. Now, I'm going to the game, but immediately I assumed it was like a 12:30 kickoff. Whenever I saw 4:30, It immediately tell me that is a TV kickoff time. It's meant for the armchair fan. So I'm happy that I'm going to it. I'm a wee bit pissed off at the time. However, I want to start off with the fact that Jim Craig is unfurling the flag. Now, normally, whenever you're kind of unfurling the flag, it should be an honour for that individual to do it. But I think in this occasion, it's an honour for the club. It's an honour for the fans, for Jim Craig to actually do it. And the reason being is it's a privilege, because for us fans to continue seeing the remaining Lisbon Lions participating in these ceremonies, it's not going to be forever. At one point, it won't be able to happen. They won't be able to do it. And we need to kind of treasure these moments. So Jim Craig made his debut in 1965 for Celtic. I believe it was in a European Cup Winners' Cup. And that was roughly around the time that Jock Stein took over Celtic. He was recruited by Willie Maley, and he spent 7 seasons at Celtic. In that time, he played 231 games for the club. And I think it's only right that we actually just kind of recognise what he did for the club. Whenever we talk about legends, he certainly is that. Now, nowadays, he'd probably, I hate to say, he'd probably be called a Tory by some people in our podcast, not Celtic fans and the viewers, but some people in our podcast. But it's because he was actually attending Glasgow University, and he was doing dental studies. But at the same time, he was playing for the amateur Celtic team, and he was called up, and he realised that he was good enough to play professionally for Celtic, but he continued his dental studies. So whenever some Celtic players retired and they fell into whatever, some people opened up pubs, Jim Craig was actually educated in a way where he could actually become a dentist and continue that profession. So despite his academic background, it was never a hindrance amongst his more blue-collar colleagues. And he was as much a part of the Celtic family as anybody else. And as his dad actually told him upon signing for Celtic, he said that there are a lot of dentists, son, but not everybody gets the chance to play for Celtic. His nickname was Tierney. That was because it stemmed from a school drama on TV based in Glasgow called That Man Craig, where the lead character was played by John Tierney, and that was hence his nickname. And even Jock Stein used to use it. And it was funnily enough because actually during the European Cup final, whenever we beat Inter Milan, Craig was actually the player that fouled the Inter Milan attacker. He gave away the penalty. And at halftime, Jock Stein consoled him and he said, "It was never a penalty. You were just doing the right thing. I back you every day of the week. You were right to do that." But at full time, Jock Stein pressed a different button. He knew which buttons to press. He knew how to motivate him at half-time. But at full time, he ran right through Craig. He said, "What were you thinking? You almost cost us a European Cup. You should never, ever have made that challenge." But during the second half, Craig played admirably. And he, I think he was actually, he helped Tommy Gemmell score the goal to get us back on track. So Craig regained his confidence and he played a brilliant second half. And I guess it's testament to him, to his ability, and to Jock Stein for his managerial prowess. Craig, funnily enough, only earned 1 Scotland international cap. However, some Celtic historians have said that he was one of the least gifted out of the Lisbon Lion 11. However, he was definitely a hard-working player, and that's why he played in the squad. That's why he is a Lisbon Lion. So anyway, back to the Kilmarnock game. Jim Craig will be unfurling the flag, and I think we should appreciate these moments while we still have them. But the game itself, Kilmarnock, they've actually been playing competitive football, unlike Celtic. They have just been knocked out of the Europa League qualifying rounds. They played Cercle Bruges, and I think it was 2-1 that they could beat on aggregate. Apparently, it was a bit of a howler that Kilmarnock conceded for the deciding goal. Derek McInnes was raging. But let's not forget that Kilmarnock provided stern opposition for us last season.
Yep.
And whenever we think about Celtic getting trebles, Kilmarnock were the architects of our downfall last season. They caught us cold whenever Brendan Rodgers was still working with the new squads. Whenever I had enough time to gel, but Kilmarnock were certainly on point, and they beat us at their own ground at Rugby Park. Funnily enough, now Kilmarnock are actually my local team because I've moved to East Ayrshire. But they were a really, really strong team last season. And people might think about the game that we beat them at Rugby Park in the final six, the final split of last season. But Kilmarnock at that point had already qualified for Europe. So Kilmarnock will drop into the Europa Conference League qualifying, I think. But let's not forget that they are the firing in terms of fitness, and they've got a defeat behind them that they want to reverse, that they want to put behind them. And they've got Celtic, Parkhead, and they're not going to be lying down to us. So we've got a live opponent. Nobody sleep on that. We do have a live opponent. So I wanted to get your thoughts, starting with Little James. The opponent itself, Kilmarnock, do you think it's not going to be a walkover, in my opinion? What do you think the atmosphere will be? What do you think about the tifos that the Green Brigade might bring or may not bring? Atmosphere, I've got no idea what the weather's going to be like on Sunday, but the summer has been hard to judge. So your expectations for the game, and I guess we'll go through the lineup. So what do you think the lineup will be?
I didn't know it was Jim Craig. It was unfurling the flag, so that'll be good. I totally missed that. But I'll hang fire with the Tory remarks until I find out if he buys lure pack and placemats, and then it'll be free reign. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, good to get back. I think it'll be a good atmosphere. The Casper Schmeichel, the pictures they put up on Twitter, I think you could see there was the kind of tifo, full stadium tifo in the background, so that'll be good to see as well. Look, I think and I know it's only friendlies, and I know all the way through it we were saying that we weren't reading too much into them, but let's read too much into them and say that if we play the way we played in the friendlies, then I think we could be pretty comfortable. In terms of the lineup, I'd go Schmeichel. I don't know if Johnson going to be ready. Going to be Ralston probably. So Schmeichel, Ralston, Carter Vickers, Scales, Taylor, O'Reilly, Hatate, McGregor. See the wings. I mean, obviously Palma gets the nod, but it's who plays alongside him. I'd probably go. Jay, it probably would be what Palma, Maida, and Kyogo up top. Maybe I was saying that Kuhn was on. Aye, nah, go Palma. Go to be Palma. But no, I think if we play the way we could, it'll be comfortable. I'll go 4-0.
Okay. Coming on to James P. For the Kilmarnock game itself, as I said, I think we've got a live opponent, which probably makes it a wee bit more exciting, because the game is going to be televised. We've got people going to the game, people watching the game, so we can't expect a walkover. It could be a boring game, it could be a high-scoring game. Who knows? But there is a jeopardy. So, what's your lineup, and do you think? What's your thoughts on the game itself? Do you think it'll be a walkover? Do you think it'll be difficult, etc.?
Well, a couple of things. First on Jim Craig, I didn't know that he was doing the unfurling. I'm really delighted to hear that myself. I was at the Celtic rally towards the end of last season, and there were a couple of guests of honour there, and I was really thrilled to meet Tom Boyd and have a good conversation with him. And in the middle of the conversation, he said, "Jim, you have to come over and meet this guy." And that was a super huge thrill to meet Jim Craig. It was the first time I ever met him, and it was fucking amazing. It was incredible. So I'm delighted that he's unfurling the flag. That's superb. Kilmarnock are going to, they'll give us a game. I read Ewan Murray's piece in The Guardian today about his thoughts on the season. He thinks that we'll walk away with it because the club across the cities a shambles. But he was quite harsh on Kilmarnock and Derek McInnes' style in the European games. But I thought they were dreadfully unlucky with the draw, because that's a better standard of opposition than you would think that they would have met that early in the tournament. And I thought it was a pretty credible performance that they turned in over the 2 legs. They should have won the game at home. But they'll be tough. They'll give us a game. But just watching us in pre-season and seeing the way that Rodgers has transformed the system, and he's got all the players firing on all cylinders, I can't see past us for being very comfortable, and I hope I'm right. Sincerely.
And Stephen, over to yourself. Your thoughts on the occasion and the lineup and the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I saw the news break earlier today on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called at the moment, that Jim Craig will be unveiling the league flag. And like you said, Gav, these moments you have to treasure. That team will be around forever, and what they achieved will be forever the greatest achievement at Celtic Football Club. And I listened to the Celtic Way, and look, I watched a lot of Celtic podcasts. I'm not afraid to say that, because all Celtic content, in my opinion, is good. And talking about the club you love is a good thing. I think it was Anthony Haggerty was saying that they should do like a kind of Rushmore effect on the Lisburn Lions type thing on the Celtic Way. And I thought that was a kind of brilliant thing to say. Yeah, you have to recognise the heroes of your club, and they're definitely icons for everybody who supports Celtic, and the history and what they achieved was just amazing. So that's a great thing. In regards to the Kilmarnock, and look, I've said this previously. I like seeing Scottish teams doing well in Europe. I sat on Thursday night and watched the St Mirren on BBC Scotland. Jerry Coyle Sunday. I think I might have said Saturday there. I do apologise. It's Sevco playing first starting tomorrow. That's baffling. Yeah, but anyway.
I was a bit miffed about that as well. You would think that the Champions would be the opening game. You think the opening ceremony would be the unfurling of the flag at Celtic Park. And I think it's pretty ridiculous that it's not. But
yeah, but let's park that to the side. Getting back onto the Scottish teams in Europe. I was watching the St Mirren game on Thursday night. I watched the home leg of the Kilmarnock game the previous Thursday, and I tell you what, like JP said, Kilmarnock put a hell of a shift in that first game, and Circle Bruges are probably, outside of us, would have been the highest standard they'll probably face this season. St Mirren won comfortably last night, and we need this for the coefficient points as well. So it's vital that Scottish teams at least make a dent in European football, and that includes ourselves. So watching Scottish clubs do well, I'm all for that. The game itself, go for a pitch. The game itself, I think, is a good one. I think for me, it'll be a tough test. It will be the pre-season games we can look into, but at the end of the day, we all know we face a different mentality in Scotland. Most of the clubs are going to play 10 men behind the ball. We have to break that down, and Kilmarnock are going to rely on the counter-attacks. And I have to say, like, I don't know what you think, Little James, in this one, but the likes of Kilmarnock and St Mirren, like, Stephen Robinson sets up his teams really, really rigid. They're all 6 foot plus. They're athletic. They're quick on the counter, and it was really impressive them against Fallure. I know it's Icelandic opposition, but they got the job done. Kilmarnock gave a good account of themselves, probably against one of the top 2 clubs in the Belgian league, which is a good thing. And Derek McInnes sets up his teams really well, so it will be a test on that front, and it'll be interesting to see how Celtic will play against that low block again. It'll be interesting to see how the wingers adapt to that. And against City, against Chelsea, DC United, you're going to get space. They're not going to sit behind the ball. So we can look into it and say we played fantastically well, which we've done. But it's going to be a different kettle of fish when you're facing that park bus again. And we're going to have the same conversations about maybe the football being laboured. But I think, again, that word patience, we need to break the team down. We need to suffocate them with the ball. And as Roger said, Celtic always rest when they have the ball. I need to pick the right moments to attack them and kind of counter that counter the threat that they would have in the counter attack as well.
Aye, that was the thing. I know we spoke about it in the group chat when the game was on as well, but across more so the Chelsea game, but across both games, Man City and Chelsea, it genuinely looked like they were defending the halfway line. That was where their defensive line was, and obviously when don't get me wrong, Kuhn was absolutely brilliant against Man City, but when you've got like Maeda in the team, he's going to thrive in that. And then you've got King Louis on the other side as well, who looks a new player, and he's flying in pre-season as well. But like, obviously that last season, certainly in the kind of pretty much the 3 quarters of the season, that was our big question marks. The fit was boring against a low block, and we were struggling to break it down. If I'm being honest, I've got a lot more faith, confidence going into the game tomorrow, that we'll still manage to smash
Sunday.
Aye, Sunday. Aye. I thought it was past midnight. Nah, but I've got a lot more faith that we'll break it down and score a few.
James, James P. Now, hi. I wanted to ask you some quick fire questions, reasonably quick fire questions. If you want to expand on them, then that's okay.
No problem.
I posed it to a couple of the members in the podcast whenever I first joined, and it's just to kind of gauge your Celtic personality. Going to start off, what's your favourite formation? And this is not about the current crop, just in general, what is your favourite formation as a football fan?
Oh, I like the 4-3-3.
4-3-3. Okay.
I like to watch attacking football, and the version of it that Ange played is the best football I've ever watched as a Celtic fan.
Interesting. Okay. What's your earliest Celtic memory?
That would probably be a game at Celtic Park. And my old man would have took me to that, and that would be early 80s, probably. Early 80s. I've got some really vivid memories of being a young Celtic fan. I remember my first game against them across town. And Terry Butcher scoring a fabulous own goal.
Yes.
And won a 3-1. But yeah. Oh man, that would be the early 80s, definitely. I remember being at the 85 Scottish Cup final, and I missed the Davy Provan free kick because I had my eyes shut. It was press tight, which I liked the way much. Yeah, they were the days.
Who's your boyhood hero?
My boyhood hero? I was a huge McStay fan, then a Larson fan.
Who's your unsung hero?
Oh, this will surprise a lot of people who think I hate the guy, but Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon played a critical role in the unsexiest position in one of the sexiest Celtic teams of the modern era. Because the guy who does all that shuffling about work in the midfield, the guy who never gets on the score sheet and never makes the headlines, teams are built on guys like that, and he was tremendous at it.
JP, I think you also have to remember, sorry, Gav, but I find it interesting, the unsung hero, the stuff he dealt with personally, both as a manager and a football player.
Nothing like it has ever befallen a single person in Scottish football.
No.
Truly shameful that the whole of Civic Scotland didn't stand with him on that. Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and we've seen it to a lesser extent with McGeady. No one stood with McGeady either. It's rife within Scottish football.
I've got every sympathy for McGeady. However, what Neil Lennon had to go through is unparalleled. Yeah. It really, really is. And I don't think he gets the sympathy which is due.
Not even close.
There's just so many people that go against Neil Lennon, and it's an injustice. It really, truly, truly is an injustice. Back to James. Who is the toughest player in your memory to ever don the hoops?
What, me? Sorry. toughest player. Jeez. Johan Malby. Oh my God. Because I remember Malby's debut, and I remember a lot of hype before it about this little Italian runt that they had in midfield called Rino Gattuso, and how he was the hardest man in Scottish football. And I think about 5 minutes out of that game, Malby ran over him like a tank. And for the rest of the game, he was completely anonymous.
Who would be and I'm looking for an honest answer here, who would be the toughest Rangers opponent?
What, in terms of the team or an individual player?
An individual player.
Brian Laudrup still gives me nightmares to this day.
Yeah, for me, it was George Alberts, but Laudrup certainly made his mark. What was your lowest ever moment as a Celtic fan?
Oh, that's an easy one. I was actually about to say, that there is a player about whom I still have wide awake nightmares, and it was Peter Lovenkrands for his last-minute goal. I think it was the Scottish Cup final at Hampden. Yeah. Horrible. That's
he was a top player of the time.
Permanently ingrained in my brain. Will never leave me, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he had those sunken eyes like some sort of goblin, which kind of exacerbated things. Your greatest ever victory against Rangers as a fan?
Oh, that would be the first one at Ibrox that I ever saw, because I lost counting how many games I'd been to Ibrox and saw us get absolutely done, and it was becoming really sickening, and it was becoming depressing. I remember I remember sort of dreading going there the first game in O'Neill's season. And as it turned out, I didn't get a ticket and missed it and watched it on TV where we lost 5-1. And I thought, thank fuck I'm not there, because I can't do this again.
Yeah.
And then we went back later in the season, having already won the double, on the brink of the treble, and saw Larsson score his 50th goal and Moravcik's absolutely finest moments in a Celtic shirt. And those two goals that he scored, that day will never. That's the opposite of the Lovenkrands goal. That day will never leave me for all the right reasons. Right from the very start, everything about that was a party atmosphere. When they started playing Simply the Best that day, the Celtic fans started singing it, and they stopped singing it. We finished the song. I mean, phenomenal. That whole day was incredible.
That is one experience I've never lived through. Going to Ibrox as a Celtic fan. Again, I've been to Ibrox as a Celtic fan, but that was back in the 90s for like cup ties. But I've never been to a Celtic fan against Rangers and witnessing for a competitive game at all. So I've still to live through that, and perhaps if the allocation does increase, then I might be given that opportunity. But I envy you. You were there for the 3-0 game, and Moravcik, as you said, like that was a defining game for Moravcik. I was going to ask you, in your opinion, where will Celtic be in 10 years' time?
Going for 15 in a row.
And in a European sense?
Well, this is where to paraphrase the Rolling Stones, time is definitely on our side, because the problem right now is that we've got guys who've been on the board for 20 years and they're set in their ways, but they are also old and they cannot possibly hang around forever. And even if this club ends up like a family-run thing, passed on from father to son, like allegedly is the plan, perhaps the sons of the fathers will have different ideals. And the state that the club across the city's in, we could be on the third or fourth version of them by then. And at some point, the penny has to drop that. In the worst case scenario, that the guys who claim that our ambition is to stay just one step ahead of them is correct. What if they fall to such a level that downsizing to match that means that we're on the level of an Aberdeen or a Hibs or whatever, right? That's the crazy aspect of that, right? How far should we downsize just so they can keep pace, right? But at some point, someone on the Celtic board in a position to do something about it will say, chaining ourselves to this derby, this rivalry, this league is not in our best interest, and we have to reach for that next rung on the ladder for a European league or whatever it is, and some version of a European league is coming, and that's where we'll be in 10, 15 years.
Okay. Well, that takes care of another question I was going to ask, so thank you for that. Wasted talent. Who's the greatest wasted talent the Celtic have produced?
That we produced? Wow. Ooh. You know, it's hard to pick one, because when you talk about wasted talent, we never know how it might have turned out. So, but there are a lot of players that I thought would go on and have spectacular careers and be in the James Forrest, Callum McGregor mould. Kind of, and I know Callum can't officially be a one club player, but you know, and some of them didn't make it for some reason. I thought Simon Donnelly at one time looked like he could be
the new kind of
the guy we've been crying out for and stuff like that. But I mean that to me is the biggest regret of where we are right now as a club, and the things that have gone so obviously wrong is that our academy has not produced a Charlie Nicholas or something like that. You know what I mean? Because I know there's nothing that fans of my generation who haven't saw an otherworldly Celtic striker emerge from the academy. That's the dream. That's what I live for, and it hasn't happened yet. I feel really sad about that. Although the question is how many seasons we would get out of him before the board let him go for a £15 million fee to Crystal Palace or something is another question. But yeah,
right. We're going to finish up for yourself and probably for the night. I was going to ask you. Okay, we can continue. We can easily continue. Okay, so James P. Final question to you, and thank you for all your responses so far. If you were to have a dinner with 3 Celtic guests, dead or alive, who would you go for?
Probably the alive ones.
I would like to hear every single Jockstein story from the man himself. Every single one of them. I would dearly love to sit and talk to Fergus McCann about the takeover and about where we've ended up and how that sort of tallies with his philosophy and what he thought, because of course his great thing was that Celtic will always be owned by the fans, and unfortunately that's not where we've ended up. And it would be amazing to get Brother Walfrey's perspective on the modern world from his point of view, and ask him if his vision for Celtic has been realised and in what way. And I still think that our club is, as I've said, this idea that we can't attract a certain calibre of player is nonsensical. Celtic is a fairy tale, and our whole history is a fairy tale. And that has an attraction for players beyond the league we play in and beyond other factors like that. And I would love to know from the guy who founded the club how he thinks it's developed and whether it's still the club at its heart that he envisioned.
I think I'm trying to remember who I went for. I went for Bertie Auld because I thought that he would be the best storyteller of the Lisbon Lion era. I went for Willie Maley because although Walfred started it off, and it's not to trump you at all, it's just my own perception. It was Willie Maley. Willie Maley was the manager for the longest time ever, and he saw a development, and he probably saw start of the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers as well, and he'd be able to commentate on the issues of why that actually started, why it commenced, because although we started off as a Catholic club in our inception, for a period Rangers were not our rivals, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but back in the 1950s, whenever the SFA told us that we couldn't fly the tricolour, Rangers were not against us in that. I think it might have went to a vote, but Rangers actually supported us and actually upholding the tricolour. And that was in the
1950s. Was making all the noise about that.
That was in the 1950s. That was a long time after Celtic were conceived, and people would have thought that the rivalry, the sectarianism, would have been in full throttle by that point. But it just goes to show you how they actually kind of worked together to support each other, or at least Rangers supported Celtic back then. That would be an intriguing time. So I think I went for Bertie Auld, I went for Willie Mealy, and I think Martin O'Neill, this turn of the century, would probably be the great storyteller. I think he's very, very good on the red wine, and I'm sure I've got some red wine to keep him going, to keep him talking. So, James P., thank you so much for that. But anyway, we have talked about the Kilmarnock game that we've got in 2 days. I'm going to go to James, little James, to go to your expectations for
fucking little James, yo.
I want to get your thoughts about this season. Is a treble the be all and end all? What about Europe with the new format? What's your expectations? I know that the transfer market hasn't yet closed. We don't know what our full squad is going to look like. But what would be a disappointment and what would be a success in your eyes?
Well, anything less than a treble, the manager's got to go, really, at the end of the day. The league's a breeding butter. Get the league won, and as I say, anything else after that is a bonus. I know we've obviously been spoiled in recent times with trebles, doubles, but at the end of the day, the league is the breeding butter. I think, obviously, I know we've had the best transfer window to this point. There is still time left, but I mean, if you look across the water, they're in turmoil. Signing projects, or I know I'm moaning we're no signing players, and then I'm having a go at the players they're signing. But you know what I mean? Losing.
Well, I would the signed the FC20 captain yesterday. That's a decent signing.
I'm always, and I'm genuinely not just saying this because they've signed him, but I'm always very, very wary with players coming out the Dutch league. Well, it was the same when we signed Giakoumakis as well. Don't get me wrong, Giakoumakis was brilliant for us. Luis Suarez, obviously the other one, but there is a few players that come out of your Wilfred Bonies that kind of, I don't know, it just seems to be a very, very hit and miss league. But on paper, it is a good signing. Excuse me, sorry, but I mean, they're in turmoil. Locked out the Rain Stadium, playing at the National Stadium. They don't know how long for. As I say, that they've let, I know it was what they wanted, but they've let kind of their experienced players go. Their captain potentially might still go. So you would really have to make us favourite for all three competitions. But as I say, the league's the breeding butter. Get the league done and dusted in, and tappy, that's a bonus. But just let's get back to the way it used to be. Let's be looking forward to going to watches. Let's enjoy the football, because for, as I say, 3/4 of last season, it was an absolute joy to watches. So I just get back to that. And to be fair, the early signs, albeit in pre-season, have been good.
Definitely.
James P., expectations for this season. So some people say that, you know, prior to the turn of the century, trebles were a thing here nor there. It was a bit of a holy grail. You could say that we've been spoiled to an extent, but this season, the gap, you can talk about the gap between us and our closest rivals, almost comparable to a recent boxing event in the Olympics. I don't know if you would agree with that, or if you think the gap is closer. Where do you, and again, you don't want to focus too much on the transfer market, because Clement was talking about us and our conduct in the transfer market. They say that we've not really progressed. And if he was to rest in his laurels and compare our potential to what we've done so far, then he's a glutton for punishment. He's already renewed his contract, and if he's here to stay, that could be delicious. He's just another one of the puppets who are going to get put down. So, again, expectations domestically for you, but again, the thing is, European-wise, we've not laid a glove European-wise in anybody for so long. And I hate to say it controversially, but Rangers done it more recently than us in Europe. So, the thing is, if you're springboarding into the Europa League, you've got a thing to focus on. But in the Champions League, it's difficult to actually properly put down expectations in the Champions League.
Sorry to nip in. See with the Champions League this year, is it possible to drop into the Europa?
No.
Is it just you're in or you're out?
You're in or you're out. Yep. Aye, in terms of domestically, I don't think I've ever heard a Celtic manager start a season talking as if the treble is the minimum expectation. They have all played that down. Everyone that I've ever watched has never been as bullish as Rodgers is at the start of this season. And even if it's only a piece of psychological warfare, it's an absolutely superb piece of psychological warfare. Because they're already rattled. They're already terrified. Their board of directors has already effectively thrown in the towel. And the manager is already on damage limitation, talking about how we're going to need time. And this is a bad spell that we're going to have. Fans are going to have to be patient for us to get through it. And Rodgers is like, we expect a treble. I've never seen a Celtic manager so bullish and so up for it before the season starts.
Did he say that, JP?
Even if it is, oh yeah, he was talking about the treble today as if it was the minimum requirement, the minimum expectation.
Oh, okay.
In terms of Europe, there is, people talk a lot about their record compared to us, but I've ran about this until my fingers are falling off. The one season that they were being judged on the stage that we've played on, more often than not in the last X number of years, they were absolutely hammered. And I was the least surprised person in Scotland by that, because I'd been saying it all the way through the previous season when they got to a European final, winning 7 games out of 21 in the second tier competition. And people were saying, oh, they're going to really make a fist of it if they get to the Champions League next. No, they won't. Don't be silly. The Champions League is so far a step above the Europa League. They will be utterly embarrassed in it. And they were. And I fully expect if they can somehow get through 2 qualifiers, that they would be, again, utterly embarrassed in it. But that's small consolation when, if we go into it right now, we're going to be utterly embarrassed in it as well. Brendan talked today about finishing in the 26. Right? We're not going to finish in the top 8. That's too much even for my most heavenly Celtic fantasy at the moment. But if we finish in the 26, I think it's the 26, we will get into a qualifying round. We'll get into a qualifying game. And we'll have to play a qualifying round to get into the round of 16 or whatever it is, or the round of 32 or whatever the heck they're calling it this year. And he says that is where we should be aiming. Now, that's fine. But if we finish outside of that 26 and end up in the bottom 6 or 8 or whatever it is, then people are going to be asking serious questions about the board, which I don't expect they'll be asking in terms of the domestic performance. Because if we go into it as unprepared as we are right now, we are going to finish in the bottom set, in the very, very, very rock bottom bit. And that will be an utter humiliation. I expect if they go out against Dynamo Kiev or Fenerbahce, I think it will probably be, and drop into the Europa League, that they'll do very well in it. They'll do very well in the second tier tournament, regardless of the state they're in right now, because the way that tournament is going to work, the caliber of opposition is going to be much, much, much lower than anything that we're going to face. And I won't be surprised to see them do reasonably well. And that'll spark a whole new set of headlines about how poor our record is compared to theirs. When you're comparing apples and oranges, it won't be fair, but it's what we can expect.
I My aim for Europe this year is to no hear about how competitive we've been. That is the fitback equivalent to a participation trophy. We didn't beat Feyenoord and come out and go, we were competitive as fuck there. It's only after we get bet that we hear about how competitive we were. So if we can go a season without that, then aye, sign me up for that.
There's too many hard luck stories. In what was it? Laga Bielka getting sent off, or giving away a penalty, home, getting sent off in the same game. It was just the one sending off home, but Laga Bielka giving away the penalty. I hate these honest mistakes, this naivety in Europe. Surely that shouldn't cost money to be streetwise in Europe. Let us as fans, we watch it every day. But why can't our Celtic team, our squad, be streetwise to actually know what they're up against? That shouldn't cost money to be able to watch it, and you know what you're playing against. You don't need to buy quality for a guy to dive at the right part in the field to win a penalty. You don't need to buy quality to not give away a penalty at that opportune moment. So I want to kind of cut out those mistakes. However, I'm hoping to fuck. Now, all respect to Joe Hart, he couldn't save. I think he saved the penalty in the Champions League, but it was like rebounded in, But Joe Hart had a terrible, terrible record at saving penalties. I'm hoping that if we do come up against penalties, Schmeichel is a little bit more adept at preventing us conceding from that opportune moment. But it'll be interesting. I'm sure we're looking forward to the new format in the Champions League. But certainly domestically, we're expecting dominance, whether it be a treble, whether it be a double. We're expecting dominance. But let's not take our eyes off the ball. So, Stephen, you're in the dark. Come forward.
One of the things that I don't. Taking issue is probably a strong word, but I'll just say it anyway. I can't think of anything else. JP referenced that, and so did you, Gav, about Rangers obviously getting the European final and stuff before us, right? But the facts are as well, whenever we've dropped into the second tier competition in Europe, we've been pretty shit as two. So effectively, they have done better than us previously. In recent history in European tournaments, and that has to change. We haven't won a European knockout tie since 2004, 2003, isn't it? So there's a lot of things that need to change in that aspect of things. And over banking this Champions League format, 8 extra games will be in Europe after Christmas as a default of this new tournament format, which is fantastic. There's more money coming in. Celtic Guard put in the comments there, £180 to £200 for the package. What's the supporter going to get in return for that? Are we going to get a competitive team on the pitch? Are we going to get a team who wins games?
That's the question.
Are we going to get a team who actually makes a dent in European football? And I think it kind of gets misconstrued sometimes at what we want. We just want to be present in the latter stages of around 16 or around 32, just to make that step. We've done it under Strachan twice. We've done it under Lenny once. And to be fair, it was probably against all odds because the squads were being really diminished at their moments in time. And Strachan was going through a period of downsizing, but he managed to guide us through two qualifying campaigns and a group stage. Lenny, obviously, with the famous Barcelona win, which was fantastic. But Gav, you're right as well. See all these hard luck stories, see all this crap about us being competitive because we had 60% of the possession but still lost 5-0. It doesn't mean anything.
No.
And do you know another thing that really grates my fucking gears, by the way, right? And it really gets on my tits. See when people hold on to what opposition players say about Celtic Park as a trophy. Fucking who cares? Yeah. I do not care if Tony Kroos said it was the best atmosphere in the world. He's walking away with 3 points. I don't care if Andre Iniesta said we clapped him off the pitch. His team are walking away with 3 points. While we're sitting there going, oh, well, if Iniesta said it's a fantastic atmosphere, then it must be brilliant. Just fucking park that shit to one side. Do you know what I mean? We need to make Celtic Park a fortress again, like it was under O'Neill. We've let that go. We've let that slip. We need to regain that passion, that enthusiasm to win a European tie again. We've done it in the past. Obviously, the Barcelona game, as I spoke about, was a brilliant atmosphere. But we got the points. We should be looking at that first instead of what people say about us or what a sports, like Sky Sports say, that the atmosphere is fantastic, or TalkSport, whatever it may be. All them, like James said, is a participation medal. Is a different podcast altogether. Participation medal for being shit and getting 1 point in the group stage. That needs to stop. That mindset needs to stop. And I just don't think that's going to stop onto this board.
JP. Gavin, you get this, mate. Movie lover that you are, right? There's a great Sean Connery quote in The Rock where him and what do you call him, Nick Cage are having an argument about what to do next, and Connery tells him what he wants him to do, and he says, right, I'll do my best. And Connery says to him, your best? Losers always whine about their best, but the winner goes home with the prom queen. That's
exactly it. And I just don't think it's out of the realms of possibility or to even think that we can qualify from this format. If anything, it should give us a better chance. But I agree with JP. We're getting into this underprepared, weaker than we were last year, and we're still crying out for that Q word, the quality signings. And if the board aren't going to get their act together, we're going to have the same conversations every year about, and like, don't get me wrong, I look forward to European football every year, even though I know it's going to end up in disaster. It's going to end up in us getting hammered, or we're competitive. Maybe next year we'll do it, and it never fucking happens. It's the same cycle, the same way we always talk about it, and that needs to change. Domestically, I expect dominance because we should be the dominant team. And I listened to that podcast with the Celtic Exchange. Gavin, you shared it. David Lowe, JP, James, I don't know if you've seen it, talking about the ownership structure of Celtic. And one of the things I took away of it was the Celtic board are just happy just to be a wee bit above Sevco. And that should never, ever be the case. And it's an absolute embarrassment as it is, because it's holding us as a club back. It's holding us where we could go in European football and what we could actually achieve. And look, we're not saying win the Champions League. We're not saying win the Europa League or even the fucking Conference League. But just do something in it to give us the pride back again and not be the hard luck story and say Celtic Park's a fantastic atmosphere. Do you know what really pisses me off, right? Do you ever see when they're in the studio? Do you ever see when they're in the studio and it's like Petrov or Hartson and it's Hargreaves or whatever? And they're like, oh, Celtic can be an intimidating atmosphere, but we haven't won in 11 games. It doesn't mean shit. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything.
It's funny actually that you should talk about the ownership structure and stuff like that, because I was one of the other pieces I did a podcast about actually for the blog. We talked about the transfer. It was talking about the transfer window, and it referenced up again, Mr. Lowell. If you're listening, again, it referenced one of his comments from last year's accounts, where he said that it's important to have a surplus because we always budget for seasons when we don't reach the Champions League. Well, that sums up the small C conservative mentality of the board and the way they think about our performances in Europe. They budget for the years when we don't make it, whereas a progressive club might be trying to make sure that we do make it every year, and that might be the priority. But no, we play it safe and we budget for the years when we don't. Find that absurd.
And that makes me think about the Wharton consigliere analogy. By the way,
little James, were you going to say something there? I thought you were going to.
No, I was just on what you were talking about. Sorry, with the atmosphere and that. It's actually
sorry, Gal.
No, by the way, that little James, I'm loving that nickname. I'm loving it. It's good.
I'm totally.
I bet you're sorry I came on here
that for the next 4 months.
You're never getting over that.
No, what I was going to say is with the atmosphere thing that you're talking about, and I've actually had arguments about it before, and the one that always springs to mind was the Real Madrid game, and it was when I'm sure it was Modric gets subbed off, and look, Modric was absolutely different class that night, like genuinely world class, and everybody started applauding him.
Oh, fuck that shit.
See,
Fuck that.
don't get me wrong, right? I get it. You can appreciate what he's done. He's a world-class operator and all the rest of it. But I'm like that. We're getting bet. I'm like, we might have played well. I'm like, we're still getting bet. And like you're saying, we need to make it a hostile, intimidating atmosphere instead of making it almost like a tourist destination. It's like an experience. It's like a fucking one of the things you'd buy in Tesco, like a day at the track or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's almost what it feels like.
Did you not see how much they lauded being the top TripAdvisor Celtic tour experience? Pish. Do you know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong. I can understand that with the tour side of it, because at the end of the day, the tour thing is essentially.
But it buys into that, though. It buys into that.
I get
it.
And if you go into the ticket office, they've got the quotes. I think they're still there, but they've got the quotes all in the ticket office for the different players, and it's nice to read and all that. But look, back in the day when AC Milan, Man United, Barcelona, when they were all coming, it didn't matter. You could have played fucking Aloha in the cup at the weekend and had Barcelona midweek, and you'd still have. Like, it wouldn't be a total write-off. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say you went into expecting to win it, but you always felt there was a chance just purely because it was at Parkhead. And now you're going to it and you're like, Real Madrid, like, if we can play well and then we'll get scudded 3-0, but we'll come out after it and we'll say we were competitive, as if that means anything. Yeah. And it's like, I want it to go back to the way it was. I don't want it to be like as I say, like a tourist destination, like the way English football's gone in it. It's all kind of sanitized and day trippers. Says me that's done a few, but you know what I mean. Like, you take my point. Like the kind of diehards that will go. They'll know like it as well. Like I don't know what it was on. It's a kind of interview it does around on Twitter now and again, and it's a guy outside Anfield talking about it, and it feels as if that's the way it's kind of gone up here when it comes to Europe. We speak about it with such almost like awe. And you're like, but it's a total letdown these days. It's not the way that it once was, and I just wish we could go back to. And it's not even that long ago, really. But I just wish we could go back to that and make it that genuine, intimidating atmosphere.
I hear about like Galatasaray, and people talk about going to Istanbul and calling it hell. They actually call it hell, but there's a massive toxicity. And by the way, go back an hour or two ago in this podcast, people were talking about toxicity. It's a great tune by System of a Down, Toxicity, and Chop Suey, if you've not listened to it. But the atmosphere in Galatasaray is toxic. It is hell. And they create that atmosphere. And it's regardless of how good or bad their team is. And that's the kind of difficulty that we're up against right now, because we had a fantastic atmosphere whenever we knew we can grind out a result against the best teams in the world. But now it's kind of David and Goliath, and we've not got a hope in. I hate to say it, but we don't have as much of a hope as what we did back then. And maybe there is a parallel between that atmosphere and the fans then and the atmosphere now. I don't want to, when I talk about Galatasaray and the Turkish atmosphere, I don't want to talk about like projectiles and actual danger to the crowd, because that's not what we're about. We are better than that. We've never ever been about that. But we need a team.
It's the feeling.
Yeah. We need a team who can deliver, and the fans need to believe in that, and in order to support it, and that's what will galvanise that atmosphere. But at this moment, we're kind of playing teams at their own game. We don't do a Gordon Strachan. We don't do a Neil Lennon. Whenever we realise it was David and Goliath, and we would change our style, and we could maybe nick a result, maybe nick a victory. But we're different now, and we're trying to play those teams at their own game. We don't have the defensive capabilities to park the bus, and that's why we're going to get carved open. And I guess that's another subject. Do you want to go back to the unpopular playing styles? Nobody really enjoyed Gordon Strachan's playing style. Nobody really enjoyed Neil Lennon's playing style. But we managed to get to the last 16, 3 times between the two of those managers. And if we're being honest, we're not going to do it under Brendan Rodgers, and neither would we have done it under Postecoglou playing style.
God, no.
I think, though, I think sorry, James. Little James.
You go.
I think it proves, like you said about Neil Lennon not playing amazing football in Europe, and he didn't. But let's give him his due. He beat a Barcelona team with Miku, with the people like, I don't think Scott Brown was playing that night, and we were missing key players all over the pitch, and F.A. Ambrose was playing, and he's at like had the Greenock Morton or something at the minute, or Queen of the South. I can't remember. He's at all these teams, but he managed to find a way to beat these teams. There's systems, there's logical, tactical explanations on how you can do this, and look, no one's saying go back to that, or we just
right. There's not a single person who was there that night or who watched that game who gives a shit what the possession stats were that night and the pass completion stats. I couldn't even tell you where they were. I know Barcelona would have been mightily ahead in all of them, but we got the result.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's it. And that's what I was going to say. Like, there is a place for that in fact, but like you were saying earlier, Gavin, it doesn't cost you money to be streetwise. No. And like, there was times when Joe Hart was, no digging out Joe Hart because it's obviously coming for the manager, but there was times I was at the Lazio game, and there was an away game as well. Did we go 1-0 up against Shakhtar Donetsk and then basically made an arse and they equalised, or did we equalise? Mine, Mudryk scored for the goal kick. Anyway, get into the weeds. But no, it was like we would take the leading games, and it was like we were still. Like, I know it was the whole "we never stop" mantra, but it was like the ball was going out for a goal kick, and he's still running behind the goals, screaming at the ball boys to get the ball back. And you're like, no, let's take our foot off the gas. Let's play some anti-football for a wee spell here and get the points on the board. Let's no rush into it, commit to this style of play, and try and win 5-0 and end up losing 2-1. But we can talk after it about how competitive we were. So, look, and I understand it is a bit of a catch-22 because if you play like that in Scotland, you're going to get hounded. But there needs to be a kind of a middle ground where we can be total football in Scotland, but kind of be able to mix it up a bit in Europe.
James, I totally get what you're saying. You can leave your hat on, but it's what Stephen Kennedy says. You need to keep to the full Monty. And there are other games where we beat Spartak Moscow away from home, and we played a certain style of football, and we kept to that style.
Samaras was brilliant in European football. Oh, I love them in European football.
Is Samaras a striker or is he a winger? Because whenever we did that best man stays on, Stephen, for that one 2 weeks ago when I spoke to you, Samaras was in the strikers. I kept him in that, but he did play on the wing whenever we signed him. So I was tempted for tonight's round for James to put him on that one. But I think primarily he was a striker. I think Samaras was a striker or a winger.
Again, all Football Manager geeky, I would probably class him as an inside forward.
I think as well, it was more of a tactical thing to put him on the wings to target the fullbacks, height advantage and knock-ons and winning the ball. Neil Lennon always said that, but he was, see when he was on his form. I know we're nearly 3 hours in, and by the way, JP, I appreciate you staying on as well. Obviously you're a busy fellow with a Celtic blog and that, but I have to say it's been fantastic. But Samaras, for me, he was a colossus in European football for us at times. Unbelievable.
And a pretty fellow too.
Yeah.
James P, would you like to do the best of for Celtic centre forwards?
Oh.
So we did.
Let's go. Yeah,
we did it with Stephen 2 weeks ago. So we're going to start off with Scott McDonald or Harold Bratback.
Scott McDonald.
Scott McDonald or Magic Zurawski.
Scott McDonald.
Scott McDonald or Pierre Van Hooijdonk.
Oh, Pierre Van Hooijdonk.
Easy choice. Pierre Van Hooijdonk or Lee Griffiths.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Lee Griffiths.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh.
Lee Griffiths or Tommy Johnson.
What was that?
Lee Griffiths or Tommy Johnson.
Lee Griffiths, obviously, all day, every day.
Lee Griffiths or Jan Vennegar Heslink.
Lee again.
Jesus Christ. Lee Griffiths or George Cadet.
Oh, God almighty. Cadet was a next level player. Cadet was excellent.
Okay, George Cadet or Moussa Dembele?
Moussa Dembele.
Moussa Dembele or John Hartson?
Oh, John Hartson all day, every day, and 10 million times a day. If he'd have played in Seville, we'd have won. And the one we never heard is Jose Mourinho.
He had a back injury for that game, I believe. Okay, John Hartson or Gary Hooper?
John Hartson.
John Hartson or Kyogo Furuhashi?
God damn it. Kyogo.
That's Christ, man. You are easily swayed. Kyogo Furuhashi or Marco Antoine Fortunaty?
All day, every day.
Okay, Kyogo Furuhashi or Mark Viduka?
Kyogo's attitude's better, and I think he's a better all-round footballer.
Okay.
Yes.
Kyogo Furuhashi or Giorgio Samaras?
Oh God, that's a harder one. Because as I say, I always loved Big Sammy, and I was a fan before it was fashionable to be a fan. My mate used to slag me all the time for that. I would still go with Kyogo.
Okay, Kyogo Furuhashi or Robbie Keane?
No, Kyogo again. Yeah.
Okay, Kyogo Furuhashi or Anthony Stokes?
Kyogo. Anthony Stokes' best game. The best game Anthony Stokes played that I've ever watched was very happily the Scottish Cup final for Hibs against.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Kyogo Furuhashi or Odsonne Edouard?
That's a really hard one, but I think Kyogo edges it. I think in order Dembele, Dembele, Odsonne, and Kyogo are the best I've seen since Larsson. Well, definitely.
Okay, and Hartson is not in that question. Okay. What about Kyogo Furuhashi or Chris Sutton?
Oh God Almighty, that's a really difficult one. Oh wow. Sutton.
And here we get to the crux of the matter. Chris Sutton or Henri Camara?
Sutton was just such an incredible side. You know, people talk about a statement signing, right? That was the statement signing. And if the stories are true, Dermot Desmond tried to second guess that, I believe. And he asked Martin O'Neill, do you really think this guy's worth the money? And Martin O'Neill said, who's the football manager here, me or you? He's worth the money. And I love him for that, because that was a statement signing. No question.
That makes me think of another question I want to ask you after this, okay? Chris Sutton or Georgios Giakoumakis?
Oh, Sutton. Giakoumakis I actually loved watching. Thought he was a great player. But Sutton's
Chris Sutton or Craig Bellamy?
No, Sutton again, but I like Bellamy, and I wish we'd have got Bellamy to stay. Although he kind of sold the jersey on Black Sunday.
Right. One question I want to ask you. You're talking about the sliding doors moment there, where signing Chris Sutton after Mark Viduka left. What do you get your thoughts on this? A sliding doors moment for Celtic. We were going to go for Goose Hiddink, but we went for Martin O'Neill. How do you think Celtic's past and present would have been altered if we went for Goose Hiddink over Martin O'Neill? Oh,
hey, that's a hell of a question, because this is one of the subjects I've written about recently, is that what I think really needs to happen at the club in order to move us to the level where we need to be is a complete separation between the football department and the bean counters, and have the football department run by, like, where you want to call it, a director of football or technical director, whatever it is, who cannot be from the UK, who should be from a European background and one of those countries that prioritizes technical football. And I think modern Celtic would look vastly different had Gus Hiddink come in, and I'm almost certain we would have had to implement a style like that. We would have had to implement some kind of complete overhaul. I don't know that we would have had a Seville. I don't know that we would have had.
That was my question. Do you think we would be in a better position right now if we were to forsake the Seville experience? But right now, we would be in a better position as a club, the way that we operate, with the way that we can bring through talent, the way that we buy talent.
Yes, probably yes.
So you would have sacrificed.
I would not have sacrificed. I don't think I would have sacrificed the O'Neill years for anything. But in terms of the change in attitude and the change in philosophy it would have brought to the club, we would almost certainly be in a better place right now.
Interesting. It is a sliding doors moment, and obviously there was that moment where Dermot Desmond spoke to Mark O'Neill, and verbal agreements were made, and we are where we are. And a lot of people would never ever give up that Seville moment, but we laugh at the people across the road for their failure against Frankfurt.
Fuck them.
Well, the thing is,
that's their memories.
I remember doing one of those like weird thought experiment type short stories a few years ago, and I called it "Killing Mr. Hitler," and it was one of those, if you could go back and change history, what would it look like? And instead of killing Hitler, what happens is that a Sevco fan goes back in time and prevents us winning the European Cup in 1967. And when he comes back to the modern world, we've won it like 6 times.
Be careful what you wish for.
So I don't know that we wouldn't have had an equivalent of Seville. That's the thing. We can't know whether the club would be different. I think it would have a more modern outlook right now. But yeah, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't have been a Seville along the way. There might have been.
Done that.
Right, gents, we've been on for 2 hours and 52 minutes. Little James, do you have anything to say? Any particular topics that you want to discuss before we eventually?
Yes. I'd like to cover the history of Celtic from 1887 to the present day. That's okay, Gavin. Thank you very much.
Can I just say one thing? Look, and we'll kind of round it off because it's been fantastic. JP, I fully appreciate you coming on, buddy, and telling what happened and stuff, and sticking with us throughout this 3 hours. I noticed on Twitter there it's already gathered a bit of traction for yourself, and people asking about where can they see it. But you're steadfast on that article remaining buried, aren't you?
Aye. I mean, as I say, I feel quite queasy about the idea that I've really upset that guy, and that he felt so that I had crossed the line so much that he did that. By the way, I think he probably doesn't. I think he probably. I can't speak for him, right? But I think he probably has kind of went since that was a bit of an overstep. And you know what? Maybe I was inadvertently guilty of an overstep myself, right? And so, you know what? I'll end up by apologising to the guy, right? For whatever I wrote that he so profoundly disagreed with, that he felt he had to do that. And as I say, I feel really queasy thinking that I've done that, right? Because for a long time, I try and keep like personal feelings. And as I say, my personal feelings about law are much more complicated than that anyway, right? But I try and keep my personal feelings and like snipes and stuff about people out of the stuff that I write, unless I'm writing about them across the road. Like, as I said once, heated driveways are nothing to do with any of us. What the guy does with his money was damn all to do with any of us, and that was a cheap shot. But the process by which his son winds up the head of recruitment is very much to do with us. That's very much our business, and we should have answers to questions like that, because we don't have a sugar daddy owner, and we don't have a gigantic pool of TV money flooding out of the club. Every single penny that built modern Celtic came from us. The club belongs to us. And these are not things that we do not need to know.
Amen to that. Back to you, Gav.
Well, James, I want to thank you so much for giving us your time tonight.
No problem, Gavin.
Little James, you go. As the song goes, you can play with your plasterine and your fucking trampoline. But for James B, no, genuinely, obviously, from the contributions that you made to the Celtic community over the past X number of years, this has been a big thing for you. I appreciate that you coming on our podcast to talk about it. We appreciate it. We're grateful for that. And on top of that, I'm happy to actually meet you and to talk about X, Y, and Z Celtic-related topics.
We will absolutely.
Thank you for staying the full course. Thank you for staying the full course.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciated it.
More importantly, to all the viewers, I hope your Friday night has been fulfilled. I hope you've enjoyed it, sober or not sober. I hope you've enjoyed it. But as we all know, Stephen likes to talk about what he's learned tonight, and it's like Jerry Springer whenever he does like a chair throwing contest, and after all the violence, he talks about what we have learned tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to the old Don. Stephen, what have you learned tonight? Give us your words of wisdom before we wrap it up tonight. We have Sunday to look forward to. The Celtic and Kilmarnock.
Gav, see if you want to hit the 3 hour mark, just say it, mate. It's cool.
we are tantalisingly close, Stephen. Do you have a quiz to throw at us?
What I have learned tonight is there is certain people in the club that we love that are trying to censorship fan media, blogs, and websites alike, which is absolutely shambolic. And like JP rightly alluded to, it is opinion based. It is not facts. It's not factual. So that needs to be separated from that. And whatever happened in the morning, he's had the feeling need to take that article down, which is absolutely shocking. You should never feel the pressure from a massive organisation to do that. But it's happened. And I think JP's come on and explained that pretty well. And like we all said, that audio clip that we listened to, there was nothing major in that. That was whatever the club claimed or whatever that individual claim may be, and whatever down the line. But yeah, greatly appreciate JP, James Forrest, coming on. It's been fantastic. I think we've all had good crack tonight. Been unbelievable. And James, do yourself, JP, I hope you do come on again in the future, because it's been a while. It's been probably over 7 or so months since you've been on, and look, I want to get you on again in the future, quite quickly, because we've had a great chat, and like what Gavin said, it's good picking your brains about certain subjects and certain things that maybe we aren't.
Quizzing lost heavily.
Well, I lose heavily in the quizzes. It's fine. It's all good. It's fine. It becomes a running joke after a while. But yeah, been incredible, and I think we've all enjoyed it. Little James is nearly falling asleep.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's grand, mate. But what I'll do here is I'll say my wee outro. Stay well. Keep safe, everyone. Let's look forward to Flag Day. Hail, hail.
No, wait. Gav has learned how to count to 88, 87, 86.
Fuck off. We're off. See you all Monday.